Good evening. Good evening.
What do you think of this final plat again? Ridiculous.
What's that?
All the conditions that we have on it,
Yeah.
I think they've been a month. Yeah.
Where to?
Sun City, Arizona.
Oh,
Going for the month of February.
doing golfing out there?
No, I'm not a golfer.
No. Real nice golf course out there.
They had 18 degrees on the way here.
Yeah, that's about I think what's in my car, so.
Huh?
It is 6:30. We will call the Town of Vernon Board of Supervisors and Plan Commission joint meeting to order. Today is January 8th, 6:30 PM. We'll call it to order with the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, roll call of the Town Board and Plan Commission members and open meeting law compliance check.
Chairman Carl Fortner,
Present.
Supervisor Commissioner Jeff Millies,
Present.
Supervisor Gary Wildy,
Present.
Supervisor Fred Mahalik,
Present.
Supervisor Lorene Dashik,
Present.
Commissioner Dan Nowak,
Present.
Commissioner Jim Solani.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a quorum of your town board and a quorum of your plan commission. Note for the record that the town planner and zoning administrator, Sean Malarkey, is here, and also from Waukesha County, planner and director, Ben Greenberg. Oh, it's okay.
Please let my supervisor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, the agenda was posted inside and outside the Vernon Town Hall to the media, to businesses within the town of Vernon. On the town of Vernon's website, the meeting is in full compliance with the open meetings law.
Thank you. On the agenda tonight, under item 4, there are 4 public hearings. These hearings are with the counties, Waukesha County, and that's why Mr. Greenberg is here, part of the joint hearing. We've got our planner, Sean Malarkey, here too, that will provide background information, and I assume the petitioners are all in the audience, and we'll have them come up one by one. What we will do is each public hearing is separate. With our attorney's advice, we need to open each hearing separately and then close each hearing separately in order. The agenda was put together so that we would try to stay, in order, on focus. And in particular, the conditional use, as you remember from other conditional use permits, that's where we go through our matrix. We need to ask questions and get answers during the public hearing, not during the discussion part of the agenda. So with that, we will start with the first one, and I will read the notice so that we know where we are in the agenda. Notice is hereby given that a joint public hearing will be held by the Town of Vernon Plan Commission and staff representative of Waukesha County Department of Parks and Land Use today, Wednesday, January 8th, 6:30 PM at Vernon Town Hall. This is to consider request RZ 51, that's a county designation RZ 51 of D and J and Sons to amend the district zoning maps of Waukesha County Shoreline and Floodland Protection Ordinance and the Town of Vernon zoning code from A5 Mini Farm District to the B3 General Business District in order to accommodate a business that stores foundation equipment on property that's currently owned by Proven Properties LLC. The legal description is in the agenda. And so with that, Mr. Minan's here. Okay, we'll start with Mr. Minan. Sean, you want to tee up the zoning request so that the public and the board and the commission know exactly what we're here to do? On this
Certainly. Yeah,
public
thank you,
hearing.
Mr. Chairman. So what the petitioner is requesting today is a rezoning of the 3-acre property. It's currently zoned A5 Mini Farm District in both the town and county jurisdiction. The majority of the property is under county shoreline jurisdiction. There's a sliver of property about a 1/4 acre in size, give or take, in the town of Vernon jurisdiction, but the entire property would be rezoned from A5 to B3. The portion that's the property that's under county shoreline jurisdiction was previously rezoned to B3. It had conditions associated with it that were tied to a site plan that never happened. It was never developed under those conditions, and so it has reverted back to A5 zoning in the county. In terms of the comprehensive plan for the property, the property is planned for commercial use as well. The surrounding property to the southwest is planned for industrial use. I'm sorry, commercial use as well. It's currently zoned industrial use to the southwest. Land that's in the village of Big Bend directly east is also planned commercial. And then across the road is planned for recreational use. It is the West Dallas Kennel Club. The property is sort of isolated in a sense. On the east side, there's an existing tree line. The larger industrial zone property that's surrounding it, which is essentially the mini golf property. That one is vacant at the moment, and then across the way, the Kennel Club is basically buffered with trees and vegetation along National Avenue. The property itself is visible from I-43, so you will see what happens on the property in some instance, but the closest point of the property to I-43 is about 500 feet.
Mr. Greenberg, anything to add from the county perspective?
Just a few items. Just wanted to mention some of the core requirements of a conditional use in the county shoreline. Thank you. One of the, want me to start over, Karen? One of the core requirements that I should note in the current conditional use available is a 5-acre requirement for a contractor's yard. Subsequent to a few of these public hearings, the town is going to be considering, and this will be happening on the county side as well, amending the text of the ordinance to allow contractors' yards to require a 3-acre minimum in certain zoning districts. B3 would be one of them. So currently you need 5 acres, but that's part of the reason for that proposal to modify the text to allow a 3-acre lot to potentially qualify for a contractor's yard. Additionally, one of the requirements that will remain is that a planting screen, and it notes 10 feet high, shall be provided between any abutting property line and the proposed use. It does note that both town and county can modify that 10-foot requirement if deemed appropriate. Additionally, the County Land Resources Division did do a preliminary review of the site plan and do believe that there's adequate space for proper stormwater management. The County Public Works Department has also reviewed the site plan. The department has indicated that the petitioner will be required to install a Type A intersection. I do have an example of that here. It would be your typical tapers and bypass lane if necessary based on shoulder widths. And this is due to the anticipated commercial traffic relative to the existing average daily traffic on that road. It becomes a requirement to put in those road improvements, so that should be an expectation of the property owner that will be expected from Public Works to get that access permit. And obviously, a sanitary permit will be required from County Environmental Health Division to approve any on-site septic systems for the proposed use.
As I understand it, and you mentioned the screening of 10 feet, I understand the setbacks are going to be exactly the same. We're just talking about the minimum lot size from 5 acres to 3, all the setbacks, the screening, all the other requirements for a contractor yard unchanged. It's
That-
just
Correct. And just specific to a few targeted zoning districts.
districts.
Whereas this A5 zoning will still require a 5-acre minimum contract yard. There was a disconnect between a B3 lot that had a minimum lot size of 3 acres, allowing a contractor's yard where you needed 5 acres. So there was some kind of disconnect between lot size requirements and the requirements of contractor's yard use.
Okay, that's summary. So, well, part of the public hearings is open. Mr. Minen, if you could come up. You're going to be up here 3 times, so we'll try and do them one by one. So this is the amendment from, like was presented, from 5 acres to 3 acres. So
But this is only, we're only talking about the zoning map amendment
The only-
right now.
talking
Not
about
the
the
cha,
zo-
not the amendment to the code itself to allow that.
right.
So just changing from A5 to B3. That's the next item,
Right.
or follow-up hearing.
Right, so this is just to amend the zoning map.
Just to rezone it, correct.
Right. Well, you've heard the summary, Mr. Minen. Do you agree with the summary? Is there anything to add or clarify?
No, not that I can see. The intersection, is that something that has to be reviewed and looked at, or is that, how do they determine that? Because when I was going to be building my shop in Muskego on Highway 45, and the state, looking at the amount of traffic I would have with my business, didn't require any changes to Highway 45, just south of Loomis Road to where I was at. They didn't feel that any extra turning lanes had to be put in. So I didn't know if that was something that would be reviewed.
I mean, it's something you can discuss with the County Public Works Department, but
Okay.
it's sort of a separate animal.
Okay.
That, you know, if you need to get an access permit from the department, and they may simply have certain road improvement requirements.
Okay.
I mean, it is a busy road, and you have large equipment coming on and off, and so.
Because our type of business, trucks go out in the morning, crews go out in the morning, and we really don't have a lot of action during the day. We don't see customers I'm in the Port Foundation business, we don't see customers like we used to years ago. They don't pop in, it's all phone calls, emails, PDFs. So it's completely changed from meeting with the builders like we used to. There are not any full-time employees that are constantly at the shop. A part-time mechanic, that's about it. You know, a truck could come back, pick up some different equipment and leave, go to another job. It's not like we have scheduled deliveries that show up on a daily basis, so it's actually pretty quiet.
Yeah, just to clarify, that's exclusively a county issue, because that's a county road, so that's something you'll have to deal with as you're getting as Ben mentioned, the driveway
Okay.
permits, when you're gonna have to deal with that.
And so we can put you into contact, and they'll certainly be open to having a conversation. I'm not sure where that goes, but and our condition of any approval would be that you get their permit. Obviously, you need their access permit to access the road.
Okay.
Questions from the town board or plan commission on the proposed amendments to the zoning maps? We'll get into the conditional use later, shortly. Commissioner Noy.
I'd like to get a clarification as to why B3 was picked over I1. Because we've got it for commercial. I don't see any retail operations going in there. It's probably going to be some type of a commercial or industrial property.
That's a valid question. It's allowed under either zoning district, so it's not I mean, it's not necessarily irrelevant. The thing is that it's the commercial designation in the land use map
Right.
has it as commercial and not industrial. And so this isn't actually an industrial use because we're not really manufacturing on the site. It's a business. It's a commercial business that happens to store their equipment and their products there and goes out. So it's not really a manufacturing use. The map plans it for commercial, and so it kind of made sense just to keep it as B3 as to what it previously was allowed for.
Is there any way we can include the other 16.8 acres in this rezoning?
That's zoned industrial right now. The remaining,
The golf site.
the golf sites, yeah, it's split zoning between town and county. It's M1 in the county and it's I1 in the town. But there isn't anything proposed for that site at the moment. And so you're saying, could we change that to B3?
Well, it seems like we've got one property here that we want to rezone to B3, and the rest of it's going to be in I1. If you look at the zoning map, there's a lot of little parcels that are zoned differently. It's not a zoning district anymore. We're zoning for specific properties. It would be nice if we could have the whole area converted to one or the other.
So the way it stands now, because that larger 16-acre property is on industrial, it could potentially develop as an industrial use. However, if there's a new commercial business or anything that comes in there, we're going to look at the comprehensive plan and say it's planned for commercial. We're going to rezone it appropriately at the time. It's something, if the town was interested in rezoning that property to commercial, we could do that.
Right.
Can't do it tonight because it hasn't been noticed in accordance with that. So that's something, if the plan commission wants to see that property rezoned, we could bring it back on another agenda and hold a public hearing to rezone that property or any number of properties on National if you felt some others should also be rezoned for continuity. But we use the comprehensive plan as a guide for rezonings as development proposals come up. And so as people say, hey, I want to do this with my property, you look at the map on the plan, it says commercial, so you got to do something to rezone it
I
accordingly.
know in the past, if we were rezoning one property, it was always called spot zoning, which they tried to avoid, and I think that's what we're getting into.
But not if it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, it's not spot zoning. It's only spot zoning is if you
Okay.
would zone something in the middle of nowhere that has
Yeah.
nothing to do with what the plan says. So the plan for this corridor is commercial, this is a commercial use, and so we're zoning it P3, which is commercial.
And it's the last property that borders the town of Vernon to the village of Big Bend.
But your point is a good one about the surrounding industrial property. That certainly,
Well,
we certainly could consider that at some point in the future to
No, it's-
preemptively rezone it to business.
Especially when we got the same property owner involved here. So
No,
No, it's not the same property, on
John Fisher owns the I-1 property.
the 16 acres.
Yes.
Oh, I thought that was proven,
No, proven power is the 3 acres that Mr.
just
Minor-
at 3 acres.
Right, that's right.
And actually, yeah, I closed on it before the end of the year.
Okay.
So you own this
So
now?
now you're the
okay.
owner,
I'm
right, or
sorry.
your business is the owner, sorry. Okay, so we should hear from, any further questions from the board or the commission? We'll hear. Are there any members of the public that wish to give comments on, other than Mr. Minor, on the amendments to the district zoning maps, both the Waukesha County and the town of Vernon? No other public comments, no other comments from the board? Mr. Minor, the commission, planner, Mr. Greenberg? So we can close the first public hearing and move to the next public hearing. And I will read that to make sure we stay on point. So,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, did you say when we began all this that we have to vote on each one independently? Or did I miss
we're in
it?
the public hearing part of it.
Right, okay.
We're in the public hearing, so we have 4 public hearings. We just did the first one, we closed it, now we're moving to the second one.
All right.
And once we're through the public hearings, which is item 4 on the agenda, Item 5 is closing the hearings, but item 6 is where we take action. And we've tried to be very careful on how the agenda was put together, labeling the action that needed to be taken on each particular step. And the Plan Commission's recommending the board's adopting and so on.
Okay, thank you.
The county is not making any decisions tonight. It's just, so everyone knows, it's just the town Plan Commission and the town board taking action tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are on the second public hearing, and I will read that. It's to consider the request CU 40, which is also a county designation, of D&J and Sons to obtain a conditional use permit in accordance with Waukesha County Shoreline and Floodland Protection Ordinance and the Town of Vernon zoning code for a contractor's yard in order to accommodate a business that stores foundation equipment on property. The agenda says, and the notice says, owned by Proven Properties LLC, but has been clarified, it's now been, ownership has been transferred. The legal description is in the agenda and has been posted. And we're talking about the same 3-acre parcel in between I-43 and County ES. So Sean, you want to take us through that and the conditional use permit, and Mr. Greenberg, the same thing on what the county is looking for as well as part of this public hearing. So we'll open that public hearing on the conditional use right now.
Sure. So we obviously touched a little bit on this in the last agenda item. And so the proposed operation is for EMC Foundations, which is owned by D&J and Sons. Is that correct?
No, that's a separate company. It's owned by
Same, same owners, but it's,
Yes,
you
same
own both
owner,
companies.
yes.
Gotcha. So, yeah, I get it. Also owned by the petitioner. Okay, so the operation itself would be a 10,640 square foot building. That's going to include some office space, some warehouse and storage space, 2 shops internally, and a loading dock. Most of the equipment is going, and vehicles will be stored indoors with some job trailers, semi-trailers, forms, and most materials stored in the fenced yard. And so there's going to be an opaque fence that's going to surround the perimeter of the contractor's yard. I just want to remind everybody, with conditional uses, conditional use decisions must be made based on substantial evidence. The applicant must present substantial evidence demonstrating that the application and all requirements and conditions established by the town relating to the conditional use or uses shall be satisfied. And so they're asking for a conditional use both from Waukesha County, because the majority of the property is under county shoreline jurisdiction. And even though the town, there's only about a 1/4 acre under town zoning jurisdiction, we would also be issuing a conditional use permit because a portion of the yard actually falls in our jurisdiction as well. So in terms of the zoning district requirements, again, they're asking for a rezone to the B3 business district. B3 requires a minimum of 50-foot setback, 10-foot offset, maximum 35-foot building height, and a maximum 50% total building footprint. What they're proposing for their site plan is a setback of 86 feet from the road, with the nearest offset being 92 feet from any other lot line. The building height proposed is 29.5 feet, and the building footprint occupies 8.1% of the site. And so what's proposed meets the general, with the site plan, meets the general district setback, offset height, and area requirements. As alluded to before, there are also some specific conditional use requirements for building setbacks for contractors' yards as a conditional use, and I'll get to those shortly. The plan of operation that's proposed, again, it's an operation of a poured foundation business, EMC Foundations, which includes office use, indoor storage and warehousing of equipment and vehicles, including up to 4 medium-duty work trucks, 2 quad-axle dump trucks, 2 boom trucks, 1 concrete conveyor, and materials, supplies, and the indoor shop. In terms of outdoor storage, it's all going to happen within the fenced yard, including up to 8 job trailers, 2 53-foot semi-trailers, bundles of rebar, lumber, bunks of XPS insulation, and aluminum baskets of forms. There'd be up to 22 full-time employees eventually. Hours of operation would be 5:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. And then on a daily basis, Monday through Friday, there'd be up to 10 employees that would park at the business to gather equipment and vehicles and job supplies for sites. They'd leave. There may be a few employees that would come back over the course of the day. And so that's the general gist of the plan of operation. Our code, not our zoning ordinance, but our Chapter 144, our commercial and industrial development ordinance has a bunch of standards for new development, and I'll quickly go through these. There's some architectural standards that are required. One of them is 50% of the street face needs to be constructed with brick, decorative masonry, glass panels, or other similar finished facade material as may be approved by the Plan Commission and Board. That also needs to extend for a distance of 25 feet as it wraps around the side of the building from the street face. The proposed building elevations as they stand are comprised mostly of vertical metal siding. That also includes a 4-foot-high poured stamped concrete base around the entire building. Another requirement is that refinished metal siding cannot be used for more than 33% of the exterior wall area of the total structure. And so there's more than that proposed. The materials don't exactly meet this, and so the Plan Commission needs to determine if that's appropriate. I'll get to it at the end here, but there is an exception process as part of this, so the Plan Commission can make exceptions to Chapter 144 as they see fit, and there doesn't necessarily have to be a hardship associated with it. So that's the first thing that's in conflict with Chapter 144. In terms of parking, there is no specific parking for contractors' yards or contractors' businesses outlined in the ordinance. The applicant did mention that there'd be up to 10 employees may park at the site at any one time. There are basically 6 spaces shown on the site. One of them is an ADA accessible space, though there are other general areas to park, other asphalt and gravel areas shown on the actual site plan, and so the Plan Commission needs to determine whether there's adequate parking for the proposed site for the use as presented. The next item has to do with surfacing, and we require all parking, driveway, loading areas to be either asphalt or concrete paved within 6 months of operation. As shown on the site plan, the majority of the area out front is asphalt, but there is a portion that is gravel that's outside the fenced area. Inside the fenced area is gravel, which does include the loading dock. And so that's another thing that the Plan Commission is going to need to consider, and whether or not an exception can be granted for that. In terms of impermeable surface, they meet the requirements for that. The loading docks need to be screened. They meet the requirements for that because it's behind the fence. In terms of storage, outdoor storage needs to be screened. They're also meeting that requirement. Fencing. They are showing fencing surrounding the perimeter of the yard. They mentioned that everything will be screened from view. To date, we don't have any details of the fencing or any landscaping that would be surrounding the fencing, and so one of the conditions would need to be that if the conditional use were to be approved, we would need to see what the fence details look like, the height of the fence, what the materials are, and then a landscaping plan associated with that prior to issuance of the actual permit itself. Lighting, they haven't provided any lighting details yet. We need to see those. Traffic circulation, we talked a little bit about this before. It's obviously a county road. Access is from a single driveway onto the road itself. No signage is proposed at this time. That would need to be approved at a later date as well. And then stormwater management. They are showing a pond outside of the fenced area in the west portion of the site. That's also going to need to be approved by Waukesha County with a stormwater management plan associated with it. The last thing that's basically required per Chapter 144 is, and we haven't had to deal with this really since we had the new zoning ordinance for the construction of a new building, but we require a letter of credit for any new buildings, any new landscaping, drainage work, paving work, etc., so that everything's completed within 6 months of occupancy, unless the Plan Commission decides to exempt that. So Number 18, if you're following along on page 4, is basically the exception process. As I mentioned, the Plan Commission may grant an exception defined as a special or unique situation, excluding a change in use or use prohibited in a zoning district, which may be authorized by the Plan Commission and may justify the waiver of the regulations of Chapter 144, and does not necessarily require the demonstration of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty. And again, those waivers that would be required if you approve the site plan as is the architecture, is the paving of the gravel, and it's also the letter of credit required if you chose to do so. So that's the gist of the ordinance. In terms of special conditional use considerations, I mentioned before, contractors' yards as a conditional use does have special considerations. As mentioned, the minimum lot area is 5 acres. Currently, we are, the next agenda item, I think it's the next one, we are considering reducing that from 5 acres to 3 acres for the B3 and the I-1 district in the town. And so that requires 100 feet from any lot line for all structures that's a residential district, or at least 50 feet from lot lines that is not a residential district. There are no surrounding residential districts, so 50 feet is required. The building is no closer than 66 feet from the right-of-way and 79 feet from the nearest side or rear lot line. So it does also meet that requirement. Another requirement is that it needs to front a arterial or major collector street, which is the case with National Avenue. That a planting screen at least 10 feet in high shall be provided between any abutting property line and the proposed use. We are requesting, obviously there's an opaque fence there. We're requesting landscaping as well to be placed along the fence, at least 10 feet high. That sort of breaks up the fence itself and softens the fence as well. So not only will be the fence, but landscaping as well. And as I mentioned, that's something that needs to be submitted and approved prior to conditional use permit issuance. And then finally, sort of a big general one is that in determining whether or not the proposed conditional use should be approved, the board, upon receipt of a recommendation from the Plan Commission, shall make a determination that the conditional use is compatible with adjacent land uses. If it's determined that the proposed conditional use would in any way be incompatible or represent an adverse effect or nuisance to adjacent land uses, the conditional use shall not be approved. And then we have our general conditional use considerations for any conditional use in the town, and that's whether or not it needs to be determined whether to approve or deny based on whether it would violate the spirit or intent of the comprehensive plan and the ordinance, be contrary to the public health, safety, and general welfare, be hazardous, harmful, noxious, offensive, or a nuisance by reason of appearance, noise, dust, smoke, odor, or other similar factors. And then it also has to meet all the other requirements of the ordinances themselves. We have a conditional use worksheet, which we'll get into after the public hearings. As we deliberate, they kind of list all of those conditions and whether or not there's been substantial evidence presented that the plan meets those or will meet those, and we've listed our conditions here on the following pages.
Thank you, Sean. Mr. Greenberg, you have anything to?
No, that was very comprehensive. I have nothing else.
Okay. Mr. Minan, you heard, and you probably have seen a copy of the staff report. So you've read it, you've heard it. Is there any inaccuracies in what was just stated? And do you concur with the setbacks, the architectural, the number of parking spots, the paving and everything?
Yes, I know some of the site plans showed gravel where that was a change that I had Kindred make with the fence line, and anything outside of the fence will be paved in asphalt. But I don't know where the communication fell through when I was talking to him about it. And with the landscaping, obviously I know we're gonna have a landscaping plan, but Keith felt to wait till after the meeting, and instead of putting a bunch of stuff in there, he didn't want to have to go back and change to what the town wanted. So he wants to make sure he gets everything on the site plan that is approved.
Questions from the board or plan commission? Yes,
Is it right to get into the discussion about the site plan and everything now, or later on when we get?
Yeah,
into
if there's
approval?
questions about it, we have to do it during the public
we have to
hearing.
do it during the public hearing, so
Hearing, well,
the public can hear it because we have to grant the conditional use. The county's gonna have to grant a conditional use, so we need to get all of it on the public record.
Is there any way that they can meet the requirements with all the garage doors facing National Avenue?
So you're saying which requirement exactly?
With the exterior makeup?
Oh, I see, with the
materials,
materials, you mean?
Right.
I think we don't really make an exception for doors themselves. And normally, you know, it's, the doors themselves could be excluded. We haven't had this discussion with the applicant yet in terms of what, you know, what the materials could be. We know you're obviously in the concrete business, and so the poured foundation, the stamp foundation makes some sense. Is there any way we can beef the materials up, particularly maybe the office that butts out, sort of protrudes from the building, if the materials on that could be beefed up potentially?
I was putting, as part of my foundation, going 4 foot in the ground for frost and then 4 foot above with my brick pattern panel. That's why I was going around the whole building with that and around the office. I could do the office in cultured stone, if that would make up for it.
Yeah, in terms of the
I guess I'm not
percentages,
sure what
I don't know if that's gonna
percentage.
meet
Yeah.
the number. And so,
When I first looked at this plan, and maybe Doug can answer my question as to why the garage doors face the street. Is there any possibility of turning this building 90 degrees clockwise?
I don't know if it would work out. Our main plan was for trucks to be able to go in the yard and then pulling the doors so that trucks are parked nose to tail inside for easy in and out access.
Seems like you would have plenty of room if the doors were on the east side and the west side too, to get in and out, but
But then
is there,
my issue is making it work with the yard.
right, well,
So-
I guess I would like to have you look at that. I know all these elevations here, we've got the wrong directions on all of them. For the front there, that should be the northwest and not the
No, at
southwest.
Pino Buildings, they had that all wrong.
Okay,
So that's,
but,
they took the plan that I had from TDI for the lot that I own in Muskego that I was gonna put this building on, and that's why they have them all labeled wrong.
well, okay. I like the elevation from the southwest side, I guess, better, if we could have that facing the road. Then you see the front of your offices there, and the big side of the building.
I
but
don't
it-
have a smaller copy with me.
yeah, it just doesn't have the garage doors. It's the front,
Oh, I
it's
do.
the front door of the office is showing,
Yeah.
and so.
You can share one with the
I
Doug.
found them.
Okay. And that, that would require turning the building 90 degrees, but the other item I didn't care for on the site plan was the location of the parking right in front. We've got a whole row of garage doors, and then we've got parking. There's no place for landscaping there whatsoever.
Well, there would be room for landscaping in front of the office area.
We got parking there,
The parking.
and a sidewalk, right? Well, a little bit of, very little. Now, if you turn the building 90 degrees, that parking would be off to the east side, northeast side. You'd have better exposure for your office area. We could have landscaping in front of the main part of the building then.
I guess with turning the building, the problem would lie with the size of the retention pond and with getting, I mean, my conveyor is 34, 35 feet long. I mean, getting the trucks in and out, that's my main concern. And if I have to pull a job trailer inside to change a tire or something, that was kind of the whole plan with coming around the back into the yard and then being able to drive through the building. So I don't know if it would work with turning it. I can ask SEH if they have tools to basically put it on their computer and see if a truck can back in and out of a building
Yeah.
with the setbacks. But
In either case, I guess I'd like to see the parking taken away from the front of the building. There's plenty of room on the side to do that too, in front of your office space there.
which that I'm not opposed of. We can do that. I feel turning the building is gonna be difficult.
Is that it, Dan? Is that it?
That's it.
Would it have to go 90, in your view, Dan, would it have to be turned 90 degrees, or would 60 or 75 if it couldn't? I mean, if they start looking at it, and I understand what you're saying, you've got to pull your trucks through and so on. Putting it at 90 may not, I don't know if it,
I don't think it'll work.
I can't, I'm not that good, good at turning pictures in my brain and then
Well,
simulating truck traffic, but.
There's room up to the northeast corner of that property that's not really being used there.
Okay,
I think it would certainly work if that building were turned 90 degrees.
but some of the,
It'll all depend on how much room
Right.
I'd have to pull a truck out.
right, the swing through in the
Yeah.
truck. So let's see if we can articulate, what we're trying to accomplish, I guess, by turning the building, okay? How's that? And then maybe there's a different way to do it, different way to meet that, maybe.
You know, I guess I don't care for all the garage doors on the front of that building
Building.
facing the road. And
So that's an architectural thing, the garage doors facing and also the metal, I think you were getting into the metal siding is in excess of what our code allows. We could allow an exception for it. If you turn the building, I think part of it was, if you go with your stone sod on the office and put the metals, I think there'd be less objection if the excess metal, if you will, would be on the backside or the side screened off than the front.
Well, it gives you more room for landscaping. If you had some landscaping in front of the bigger part of that building, that would kind of break up that metal siding there.
Also, with the landscaping in front of it, it
Right,
won't look,
right.
right.
Which if we'd move the parking lot more towards the entrance area, then I can landscape in front of the office area. And there's also room to landscape, alongside of the office and at the
Yeah.
northeast corner of the building also.
Do you need all three of the doors?
And I do.
I guess the only other comment I would have is when we get back into the conditions, where we place a number on every item that the applicant's going to be using. Sometime in the future, he decides he needs another boom truck, and we're only at 2, and he needs
Yep.
3. Does he have to come back in and get this changed?
That's a great question. And there's a note in the conditions that says, well, there's kind of two parts to it. One is which of these should be pulled out of the conditions and just put in a plan of operation so that it doesn't require a public hearing to change. and it could just be done at a plan commission meeting, in a board meeting, potentially, or do we loosen, so that's one part of it. The other part is, do we generalize some of these things and don't necessarily put a limit on the number of
Right.
of vehicles or employees or whatever it is? And so those are great questions, and I think we should talk about those. I was gonna wait till we got into the deliberation of the substantial evidence, whether or not some of these go to the plan of operation versus the permit itself, but whether or not we generalize some of these might be a good time to do that now. So, yeah, I'm open to either way, obviously.
Everything's gonna be enclosed inside a fence. I guess it doesn't matter to me what he has inside the fence. If you can't see it, you can't see it.
Mhm.
I'd hate to limit him in the future, and have him come back.
Yeah, we could generalize, so for indoor storage and warehousing of equipment vehicles, including work trucks, conveyors, materials, et cetera, and leave it at that. And so that way,
Because like as of right now, we do have a few backup footing trucks that don't always go out.
Right.
Unless we're swamped and then another crew takes it out. So we do have a few backup trucks that sit out in the yard right now.
And then outdoor storage would basically be, just include job trailers, semi-trailers, rebar, material, forms and similar equipment.
So would those items be on a plan of operation?
In this case, it doesn't really matter, because he wouldn't have to amend those anyways. They would cover everything that he needed, one way or the other.
A lot of those items aren't in my yard at one time anyways. It's very rare that I have everything back in the yard. They usually move from site to site in a constant rotation.
Right, they're constant rotation out in the field.
So if you never had to change the number of trucks or the number of whatever, it wouldn't matter where it is, if it's in the permit itself or in an associated plan of operation, because it wouldn't need to be, if he's operating his business as he's supposed to be, as a Port Foundation business, those are the things that he needs to have anyways.
Right, I just don't want it to become, lack of a better word, just a storage facility or a junkyard filled with vehicles. So somewhere, it seems to me, we should have, if you want to generalize the type of vehicles, perhaps, but the number of vehicles, inside, outside. Now that, if that's in a plan of operation, that's fine, as opposed to a CU.
So work trucks, dump trucks, boom trucks, conveyors, materials.
And you could put an overall limit, in the plan of operation, you could put an overall limit, 12 trucks, of these types of trucks or something like that, as opposed to specifically for medium duty, 2 quad,
Mhm.
to allow for a little more flexibility. But I don't want an unlimited number there, or,
Yeah,
start making
so,
it look like a storage facility or where she had a junkyard.
sure.
Trucks out of operation and,
So for example, right now, in my current yard there, I've probably got 5 trucks that haven't left in the last few weeks, but they'll randomly be taken when needed. For example, a flatbed, top kick, for hauling a few bundles of rebar, picking up styrofoam, and make it parked. So there are trucks that don't always go out.
right. And I don't think that's objectionable, what trucks or trailers not going
It's
out.
all stuff that gets used.
It's all stuff,
not
yeah, it's stuff that gets used at some point, and there's some overall limit to the number.
So I think it could be enumerated by, no junk type items can be stored. It's just related to materials and equipment used as part of the operation. I think the site plan will also further allow you to restrict where storage can occur and where it cannot occur, and what type of storage can occur there, so that we don't have a salvage yard type of concern occurring where stuff's just being stored, or parts for vehicles are being stored outside, et cetera. So I do think those could be addressed through whether you think it's appropriate through the plan of operation conditions or the CU, it can certainly be restricted in that way. And certainly some type of condition that says minor changes may be approved through a plan of operation change, and substantial changes would trigger a public hearing requirement or something of that nature.
We do have that as a general conditional use approval condition. So any changes to plans associated with the CU don't need a public hearing, and so if deemed insubstantial.
Or deemed minor, I've
Right,
seen that
right.
language.
Yep, exactly. So, but I guess the numbers are tough to not be arbitrary. So we said 12 trucks, for instance, and so what he's currently saying now is 4, 6, 8, like 9 large vehicles or pieces of equipment, and so 12 would allow more, but what at 12 because it allows 3 more and wouldn't matter? Do we really care about the number?
I arbitrarily said 12.
Right. I mean, it gives them a little bit of an expansion, but as you mentioned, everything has already got to be stored indoors or in the fenced area, so is it an issue either way?
Or can we just say non-operational vehicles or equipment can't sit outside for more than a year or something like that?
Yeah. Everything on site's got to be part of the business, and no,
I'm just thinking if a truck breaks down and they're saying, that's too much to fix, we'll save it for parts.
all equipment, vehicles, and materials need to be associated with the function of the business, and nothing can be stored outdoors for more than whatever period of time if it's inoperable.
Was it my understanding that the town is gonna have a conditional use plus the county?
Correct.
Shouldn't they be compatible?
They should.
We'll take you're gonna be making a recommendation
Okay,
relative to the county-zoned areas. and-
Right.
And our ordinance requires that we substantially incorporate your conditions of approval into our permit. So they will be a substantial part.
and who enforces it?
The county would enforce a county permit.
Okay,
But we also have our own permit because.
Correct.
Yeah.
But in terms of the county CU, we would enforce, Sean can enforce that quarter acre.
I'm not,
It-
not me.
I guess the question is, why does the town have a conditional use, and if it,
Only because
is
there's.
this gonna involve our quarter acre? Or-
Yes, the yard is on a part of our quarter acre. If it wasn't, if, let's say it was just grass in our part, we probably would not.
It's shoreline zoning. I mean, that's why the county's involved. If there wasn't
I
shoreline
don't
zoning,
understand why
it
it's
would
in
all be
shoreline
town of
zoning
Vernon.
even, but.
So what was the period of time we discussed for inoperable vehicles? 6 months?
I just threw a year out.
A
I don't
year?
know what we didn't discuss it really.
And the odds are if you got a piece of equipment that's sitting irrelevant in a year's time,
Yeah,
from a trucking standpoint, you don't keep that stuff.
no.
So a year, does that sound fair, or should we tighten it up more?
Or shorter.
I'd go 6 months probably.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, 6 months.
Nothing
But
outdoors?
you're in business, you're gonna,
Mhm.
it's gonna be significantly shorter
Yeah.
than 6 months.
I mean, there has been times where we've had an engine go out on one of our internationals, and by the time we had a motor back in it and a tranny back in it, it was a year. So,
So
I
maybe,
mean, they don't always happen fast.
Are we back to a year? We're not gonna know unless we get a complaint anyway, I guess.
right.
But then again, if it's something that's down, it's gonna be inside the shop then, because it's too hard to work on it outside.
Right, if it's indoors, I think the concern
Any
is,
problem.
yeah, it's inside. Nobody's looking at it, and it's not, doesn't look like a salvage yard if you're, got a truck engine and a transmission taken apart in the shop.
So do you need that accommodation if you were gonna bring it inside anyways, to be able to store it outside?
Yeah, there's times, I mean, I would. I mean, if we gotta push something back outside because we gotta get other trucks in. You know, anything to make it work.
So, I'm sorry, so then we're back to a year?
think,
Yes.
I think so,
Okay.
yep.
So which of these, now that we're going to generalize the vehicles and the equipment and not limit it to a particular number necessarily, we still have employees up to 22, we have the hours, 5:30 to 6:30 PM. Does that stay in the permit itself, or does that get moved to a plan of operation? Well, for amendments is easier in a plan of operation, that's.
Those are our average hours. So
You-
I know when TDI filled one out for the city of Muskego, they put like 4 AM to 10 o'clock at night, which I can tell you that's never gonna happen.
But you're gonna exceed 6:30 sometimes?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so then we
So
have,
that's why, when I filled that out, that was our average times.
so what's the limit?
I would say the latest I've ever had a crew come back was probably 7:30, 7:45, around that time,
So you'd put 8 PM there.
yeah.
You don't start up before 5:30?
Usually they don't.
You run into problems during the summer when the days are so much longer.
And that's why the late.
That's why there's the 5:30. Yeah, the
Yeah.
sun's up at 5:30 in summer.
And it's not set until 8:30, or light till 8:30 at
My
night.
guys left Rubicon today as soon as it got dark, so they couldn't see any longer.
Well, let's go to the question of whether these, Sean, whether these should be in the CU or plan of operation. In your planner comments, they're under plan of operation.
They are, well, plan of operation as in, this is the plan, but the way we've always written them in the past is we just left, in the conditions of approval, we've left them in, approved as conditions, and so they just make their way into the conditional use permit as such, and then if it's not part of a separate plan, then it can only be amended through public hearing, and so which of these are so important that you'd want them to be only amended through public hearing? And maybe none of them. If they want to come in and change the hours till 9 PM, does that require a public hearing?
Yeah, it wouldn't.
Well, it is it's going to be business, and it's on ES and the freeway, so.
Right,
And the area around it is
yeah.
commercial already.
I don't know, or just state these are the typical work hours, but not to exceed sunrise to sunset during summer months, or,
I would say it would probably require a public hearing if we got a complaint.
So that's why the hesitation, right? I mean, are these
That's why we want
these
to leave it in
important?
potentially.
Important enough to go to public hearing, so they
Right.
should be in the CU? I mean, that's the question.
Right, that's the question.
And, whether there's 22 full-time employees or 25, probably not, If the outside storage area, vehicle and the equipment and materials being stored out there exceeds some amount, seems to me then it might be appropriate because it's starting to look like a salvage yard. Hours of operation, that's more I think that's more typical in a plan of operation, isn't it, Sean? The hours that you operate.
It
number of
is,
employees.
sure, unless it's
The indoor storage.
very sensitive and like
Right.
there's a couple residences next door and we just wanted to make sure that we were protecting them and we're hard and fast about the 5:30 or whatever it would be. Not so much the case in a business district.
Right.
So I guess if I was recommending something, I would say, let's take all of this out. Besides the general use itself, saying what the use is, office use and a board foundation business with basic indoor storage of equipment and outdoor storage of equipment, and take everything else out and all the specifics and put in a plan of operation. That's what I would do.
County, have any comments on that?
I think you folks need to operate how you see fit, but I think typically those types of, the CU enumerates the broader use of the property, and the operational details are typically in a site plan of operation. And that's typically how we would operate, to have that flexibility. It can prove to be kind of cumbersome to, you're dealing with small changes and going through a public hearing process and the weeks that it takes and the expense that it takes. So I think to Sean's point, if it's critical, it should probably be part of the CU. And now site plans do go in front of your plan commission in Vernon. So any site plan changes, it wouldn't trigger public hearing, but you folks would have an opportunity to approve those changes and at a regular meeting. And so you'll get a kick at the can at that point as well.
Questions, comments from the Plan Commission or the board? Are we getting a consensus on removing those items and putting them in the plan of operation as opposed to the CU, as Sean just stated?
That makes sense.
I would agree.
Correct.
Okay. Do we care about number of equipment? You mentioned 12. Indoors, I don't think we really care about number.
Yeah,
Outdoors, do we have a limit on trailers and semi-trailers, for instance?
If we can't see it, what difference does it make?
Well, you might be able to
You might be
see
able to see
the
it.
tops of some of this stuff.
Yeah, maybe.
yeah, the
Even if
screening
you
is
can't
10
see it, what
feet.
difference-
Screening is 10 feet, but, well, the fence won't be 10 feet tall.
Right.
The fence itself is gonna be 6 or 8 feet or something, like 8 feet probably. And then the
I wasn't
plant,
sure what you guys recommended. Obviously, I'd at least go 8 foot.
I would say 8 foot for the opaque fence, and then it's the plantings that are surrounded, that's gonna have to be at least, arborvitae or something that's at least 10 feet tall, that's surrounding, but it won't be one on top of another on top of another. It's gonna be, they're gonna have some space to them, so it's gonna provide a little bit of softening to the fence and block some of the view behind, but there, you might be able to see a couple things back there.
But it's a business district, right?
Correct. So, right now, he mentioned 8 job trailers, 2 semi-trailers, and the rest is just materials, so that's 10 trailers or semi-trailers. Do we want to maybe say 15 trailers or semi-trailers outdoors at any one time? Is that, could you
How much
live with
room
that?
is back there? How many do you think you could? But you
It's
have
hard
to,
tell
you
until
have
I
to
start
maneuver them
placing
around too.
stuff in my personal yard right now at my barn. I mean, I was surprised how much I fit in the area, so I don't think I'm gonna be jammed up for space at all. And like I said, it's not like everything's there at once.
Right, because you're out on the,
Yeah.
It's out in the
Everything's
field.
rotation. I have 5 sets of forms that are
Right.
constantly out. So there may be 1 or 2 back at the yard at one time.
right, till there's a recession, right?
Yes.
Well, you want them out in the field, that's how you make money.
Back to the hours of operation. Like I said, when I filled that out, that was the average that we're operating. So now, I do have, like, one crew will opt to do some work on a Saturday, so somebody may come in and out. Is there any opposition to that? Or is it gonna be as I need it? Is that anything that I have to ask the commission about?
We'll have to address that, because it's limited to Monday through Friday now. So Saturday, the same hours?
Not really. Usually if it's Saturdays, they're only working half days, but this would only be if one guy would come in and grab a truck.
Mm-hmm,
Because the majority of the employees drive themselves straight to the job sites.
sure.
What did we come to as an agreement or understanding on hours of operation? Is it sunrise, sunset, or we were talking about it and then just let it?
Well, I wouldn't be able to be limited to sunrise to sunset because, I've got crews that they stay out until they can't work no more.
Okay, I'm just,
And
yeah,
we hit a 60-mile radius.
okay.
So that wouldn't be possible. There's times like tonight, guys were coming back from an hour away in the dark, back to the shop.
So was there an agreement on other times other than the 5:30 to 6:30?
8:30.
Went to 8 o'clock, right?
8.
8, I'm sorry, 8,
Eight,
yes,
yeah.
8.
Okay.
So, does anyone have a problem with 5:30 to 8, Monday through Saturday?
fine.
You said
with me.
most of those, they're not gonna work that late on Saturdays for the
I
most part.
very rarely work my guys on Saturday. I have a boom truck driver, he'll come in once in a while to catch up on all of his stuff, but that's one employee coming in, taking a truck and going.
With the freeway right next, trust me, I live right there.
Yeah.
His little dinky business, no offense. This would be my youth to- No offense, Don.
Nope, none taken.
I mean, it's so busy there, Sean.
No, I get it, I just, we gotta set some parameters, and so what are they?
Include all day Saturday, doesn't matter. I
Just have the regular hours on
So
Saturday.
5:30 to 8, Monday through Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we going through all these conditions?
No, we
No.
just, anything you have questions on, let's,
Well, I know on the next page, page 7, 8 and 10 are the same thing, same paragraph.
8 and 10.
Is on your staff.
Oh, yes, yeah, one's a duplicate. Let's take one of those off.
And getting back to 8, in the center sentence there, you got, there shall be no outside storage of junk, debris, construction material. Now, you've got insulation panels that would be considered construction material.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's just, these are just standard conditions that we dump in, but we should
Yeah.
modify this one because,
Even the rebar would be construction material.
yeah,
But
we,
I
we,
just-
no, that's a sort of junk or debris, basically, or other refuse
Yeah,
materials.
fine.
And just take out the construction because that's allowed.
Where are you on this, Sean? Are
Page
you-
7, number 8,
Oh, page 7. Oh, okay.
that's a good point. Okay, back, because we kind of keep bouncing around, do we set a number of vehicles for outdoor? You talked about you asked how much room he had, and he said he thought he had, he wouldn't have any issues with space out there necessarily. We talked about a total of 10, in the application was eight job trailers and 2 semi-trailers for, so 10 sort of vehicles out there. Do we want to limit the outdoor storage of vehicles or not?
I'd prefer to have some kind of limit, upper limit on that, on the outside.
Right.
Storage. The
right.
indoor,
Yep.
you know,
So he says 10, 15, 12?
12, 15? Is there,
Could I get some opinion from him as to what,
I think 15 would be, if we're not talking trailers
No.
and trucks combined, so we're talking vehicles, I think 15 would be a safe number.
15 total vehicles.
Yeah.
the
It may not
vehicle,
even be that many.
Vehicles or trailers?
Some-
vehicles,
Yeah.
yeah, vehicles plus trailers is less than, is 15 or less. Is that it?
So
Yeah.
combined?
Combined.
Combined.
Yes.
Um,
Outdoors, yeah.
Well, if I
Semi-trailer.
do get a time when everything's back.
Most of it goes inside.
You got a
right?
tractor and a
Also goes
trailer,
inside,
so,
but
yeah.
it's
We're
the
just-
trailers. So,
We're talking about outdoor stuff, right?
yeah,
Just outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
So how much will be outdoor at any?
I'd have to count it up to see if everything's there at once, including the few trucks that sit out in the yard now.
So when, in your application, when you listed all the vehicles and equipment, that was not accurate?
It's close. I do have a lot of stuff that sits at my house, so.
So when the work trucks and the dump trucks and the boom trucks come back, those go indoors, right?
Those go indoors, but there are a few other trucks, flatbed, another small single axle 5-yard or 2 5-yard dump trucks, little ones that don't get used but a few times a year.
Okay.
So we're talking plow trucks, 2 plow trucks, I mean miscellaneous stuff that it may not go over there, it may just sit at my current shop now. But
and along those lines, is a tractor trailer, is that 1 unit or is that 2? Because the trailer may just be sitting there and the tractor's doing something else.
yeah,
So
I don't know how you guys would
that's what I'm asking, yeah.
rule that.
Sorry.
Or can we just say all equipment or vehicles outside must be licensed, current license and registration.
All right, we do license and register, insure everything that's there
Yeah, or if
because
it's-
we never know when it's gonna leave the yard. At any
But are you
set
saying
time.
like for a trailer, it's licensed?
Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah.
And same thing with a tractor.
Yeah.
So,
Right, but that doesn't limit the number in any way, that's.
no,
No, with that, I mean, that way if something's not being used, it's not gonna be considered junk out
Right,
there.
but
whereas-
we've also already said that anything outdoors has to be operable within a year, so
Right.
they're doing the same thing. Those conditions
Yeah.
are doing the same. The yard's only so big, you can only put so much in it. And it's primarily screened. A trailer that isn't attached to anything isn't gonna be visible at all.
No.
The tops of the trucks.
Tops of
maybe.
them might be.
No, the trucks themselves.
You know, the pickup trucks.
The flat,
Not
the
the
flat, the
pickup truck
flat,
now.
Not the
flat
pickup
trailer,
trucks,
you're not
the
gonna
trailers,
see.
The trailers might be though.
Right. So,
The job trailers aren't more than 8 foot tall.
right.
do you have any, trailers that are encapsulated in some way, or are they all flat?
The 2 semi-trailers are van trailers.
Van, thank you for the
So those are
word.
probably the only 2 that are gonna be visible, but.
Do you have drop depths, or are they just straight flat on your?
No, they're enclosed 53 footers.
Okay, okay.
So, Carl, do you still feel strongly about having a number limit? Knowing that we're probably only gonna see the semis.
Right, I
and-
would just be worried that it starts looking like a salvage yard. That's my only point there.
From the freeway?
From the freeway or from ES,
Well, you won't see in the,
I don't think you'll
in,
see anything
from the
ES.
freeway.
well, the freeway is 500, it's 500 feet away from the freeway, so you'll see something. The freeway is probably a little higher, but it's fairly far off. There'll be some screening, but I don't think from National you'll see more than a couple of, the tops of the semis.
Right, if that's all that is, then
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm just going off your application and what Sean put in his report. I mean, we started our conversation like these things could have been part of the CU itself, and you said, including up to 8 job trailers and 2 53-foot semi-trailers. Okay, well, if that got written to your CU and you exceeded those numbers, you're in violation of your CU.
Right.
So that's why we wanted to provide some more flexibility, put those kind of things in the plan of operation as opposed to your CU. And so now we're talking really plan of operation, I think, unless.
We
well,
are.
We were talking plan of operation versus CU, and the only thing in my mind anyway, the only thing where a public hearing that is an amendment to the CU might be, is something the public would actually see or have a comment on, or a complaint on. And that's difficult to predict, especially, and this is a commercial area, there's no question about that. And it is gonna have an 8-foot fence, like you said, and 10-foot landscaping and breaking up the fence, and the trailers aren't that tall and all of that, so. I guess to me, if there's consensus that we don't necessarily need a number in the CU, that could be addressed in the plan of operation,
Or not at all.
or not at all.
We'll obviously list these types of equipment. Everything's associated with the business, everything's operable within a year, everything's licensed, nothing on site, no junk on site. And so we can describe all that. We can describe all that in the CU, in fact, because none of that has any impact on number or how he operates his business. The only thing we're gonna pull out then and put in the plan of operation is the number of employees and the hours of operation, in case those have to change.
As well as the details on the type of trucks and so on, other than the general.
Do
what
we
you
care
just
as long
went
as it's
through,
associated with the
operational,
business?
it's licensed and all of that, yeah.
But if they're, they're work trucks, they're dump trucks, they're boom trucks, that kind of a description.
That kind of
right?
description, right.
Yeah, all right. So everything moved to the plan of operation besides very general descriptions. Do we need a number of outdoor vehicles?
What other people think about that?
I thought you said 15 or something like that.
Like I said, I didn't take into consideration plow trucks that I own that are at my other shop right now, that sit there, you know, single yard dump trucks that don't always leave. I didn't take into consideration those.
Right.
I mean, I'm pretty easy to work with with all of the equipment in the yard. I mean, it's pretty well organized and neat. And if there's stuff that I can't keep there, I mean, I'm not opposed to moving a few vehicles back to my own property.
Does the 15 still seem reasonable to you, or that was a number that you came up with, and I'm just...
Yeah. I can take a better look at it just to make sure that
Okay.
I'm covered there. Because like I said, if all of a sudden everything's back at once.
If we take action
I
today,
want to make sure
we
that,
gotta know today.
Yeah,
I want to make sure that I can fit it all.
What Ben just said is, if the plan commission and board chooses, we could take action on the conditional use potentially, and then bring the site plan of operation back again with the landscape plan and everything else, and we could iron those details out
okay.
later, after you get a better sense.
Whatever facilitates. Yep.
So, with the plan, we'll say the plan of operation would come back, just like the landscape plan, the lighting and signage would.
I'd rather see that everything that is concealed that has to do with the business would be able to stay there.
Right. Yes, not have to constantly move it on and off.
I mean, we're not talking about hauling employees leaving junk cars in there that they're working on or anything else. It's everything that pertains to the business.
Yeah, I hate putting numbers on,
Because how am I supposed to grow?
yeah, in 10 years,
Yeah.
maybe
If
double the
I
size or
get
something.
limited by this. I mean, that's the thing.
So part of that's why I think it makes a lot of sense to keep that a plan of operation detail, so it's not a big deal for you to come in and say, I'm going gangbusters, I'd like to park a few more vehicles. But I do think that an unlimited number can create some potential issues. Let's say you win the lottery tomorrow and sell the business the next day. What do we wind up with? And you won't always own that business, and that's just, but
Well-
you folks have to consider,
But we lock our CUs down to.
is it a single, it won't be transferable?
Right,
Okay.
it's to the business itself.
Fair enough. So bad
To the
bad
business,
example.
to the business and the current owners.
Right.
But how do we enforce if third-party storage starts to occur on the property? There's no way to really, there should be something in place that at least ensures that they provide a list of the vehicles licensed to the business every year on an annual basis. I'm not sure, but I think if you provide flexibility, you need to extract something in return, which is to understand what should or should not be on the site, if there are any issues. I just don't know how that would be a
And that could all,
tricky-
and that could all be part of the plan of operation that's
certainly could.
reviewed annually, Sean?
Or every 2 years.
Or every
whatever
2
it
years,
is.
yeah, I think we had over, every 2 years on another CU that we had.
For my edification, why do you have all those vehicles parked inside the structure? Fair wear and tear, or?
Yes, wear and tear,
Okay.
and it's very expensive to replace. So when it sits
The
outside,
vehicle.
yeah.
Okay,
Basically, it's about $1 million worth of equipment that pulls onto a site to do every foundation, from the conveyor to quad axles to footing truck, the wall truck, and all the tools and everything else, and the forms. So it's best to keep it inside.
Well, we would like to, we're always mindful, at least I am mindful of your timing and moving forward on a timely basis and not cause undue delays. So if we can do what we can try to do as much as we can tonight, and then if we can defer things to, like Sean says and Ben says, to iron out later, we could do it that way too. In some of the details, because it sounds like your landscaping plan's gonna have to be ironed out, and
Yep, we need to see the
Plan of
lighting, we need to see the
operation.
landscaping, we need to see the sign,
signage, you're
and now,
right?
and now the plan of operation.
Other questions, comments? Is there any member of the public wishing to make a comment or ask questions on the item that we're on the agenda, which is the conditional use? Better say this properly. Conditional use permit in accordance with the Waukesha County Shoreline and Floodland Protection Ordinance and the Town of Vernon zoning code for a contractor's yard. Any comments from the public? Then we'll go back to the board and the commission. I see no comments from the public. Mr. Miden, stay where you're at. Okay, Commissioner Slarty.
I had two questions yet on the site plan here. The loading dock, right now it shows gravel. And I thought we said it's got to be,
It's inside the fence. And that will be, the loading dock will be concrete. When we come out of the building and turn, and then the dock will be there. That's all concrete.
Well, the plan that we have doesn't show
Oh, it does, it's not
concrete for
labeled?
that.
no, no,
Okay. Just shows gravel. Okay.
okay.
So you're saying then that, so we know everything north of the fence is asphalt, right?
Yes,
And then you're saying that the loading dock itself is concrete,
the loading dock will be concrete.
just leading up to the loading dock
Yes.
itself?
Yes.
Okay. And our code requires that driveway areas, parking areas, and loading areas are asphalt or concrete. So that would cover all those things. Everything
So-
else
So it'll
is,
go from the gate that's shown to the dock will be some,
For the loading dock, you have to exit the building,
Yep.
and there's a concrete pad. And you turn, and then the loading dock is, that concrete pad is the dock.
okay.
so that wouldn't necessarily require an exception then for
Yeah.
the surface of the
What about all
materials?
of it?
Because the only thing that's gonna be gravel then is
Trucks
just gonna be
coming from over here.
the storage yard
This is all
of
asphalt.
equipment,
Yeah, this isn't.
right?
I'm sorry.
The only thing that'll remain gravel
This
is
changed
just
to
basically
asphalt. Everything
the storage
inside
yard,
would
what's
be
being
asphalt.
stored.
Yes.
Well, it's not right then. That's gravel. That's where the loading
That
dock
one
is.
section outside of the
No,
fence
the
is
loading
labeled
dock
gravel, that's
itself
gonna
is
be
concrete, and this is concrete.
Right. Yeah, that's just a little pad. Then they're actually driving on the gravel.
Yeah.
Is there any need to be concerned about permeable surface, okay, with the amount of surface that's here?
They, so gravel or concrete or asphalt is all considered to be impervious one
Right.
way or the other. And they're under what's required.
Okay,
I think
thank you.
60% impervious is the limit, and they're at 49, I believe.
Thank you.
The second question I had was the pond, the retention pond. The fence doesn't go around it right now. Does the county mandate that? Is that going to be on their permit?
I don't believe so. I could verify with the Land Resources Division. Do you know if it's wet retention? It may be a dry basin that's ultimately, that I don't know what type of
I'm not
stormwater
sure.
BMP is
Keith did
proposed.
not say either.
So it may very well be a dry infiltration basin and not a wet pond.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Because it said pond, I thought, a pond.
It's got water, right?
Yeah, I asked
Exactly.
SEH to design that so that whatever large trees are
For-
there, we can keep.
Yeah,
Trying to keep the older oaks and that are there.
okay.
So what I have now for, if the conditional use permit would get approved tonight, they'd need to come back for the plan of operation, the planting and the screening plan, the lighting plan. They would have to also update the site plan. We talked about changes in parking
I would like
requirements.
to
and-
have them investigate that, yeah, so we don't have those doors on the front.
That's right, so we're gonna wanna see another option for a reconfiguration of the building. Doesn't mean that's what's gonna be approved ultimately. I mean, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and we'll have to reconsider that, but at the very least, we talked about moving the parking spaces from the front to the west side of the building, and so that'll have to come back. Other general conditions of approval are the stormwater management plan that's gotta happen, the erosion control plan. The property needs to be fully rezoned, as we just talked about before, it's got to go through the county process as well. And then the changes to the code, which is the next item on the agenda. So all those things have to happen for the permit to be issued.
Sean, is there anything on our conditional use matrix that has not been addressed? I'm looking at it as well during the public hearing because I don't want to close the public hearing until all of those items have been addressed. You see anything?
Have we not talked about something on there?
Right. That's what I'm
Every,
asking, yeah.
well, some of the things that we talked about, like general health, safety, and welfare conditions are very, very general. So based on what you've heard tonight, as to, what's being proposed in terms of an operation, all the regulations and protections that are in place, you'll need to make a determination whether or not what you've heard means this will not violate the health, safety, and welfare, et cetera, of the community. It's consistent with the comp plan, it's consistent with the zoning, all of those things. So that's kind of, you'll need to generalize that one. Everything else, every other condition, I think we've addressed in detail, though some have changed, obviously, based on what we've said tonight.
Can I ask a question? When Dan mentioned the doors, I know that there was just a building that went up in Vernon, right next to Proven Power, that's long building with 14-foot overhead doors, and those are in plain sight of National Avenue. Those aren't turned away. And that's even a longer building than, there's 6 doors across that thing. And it's
Aren't
plain
they
as,
on the
plain
east?
as day.
The on the east side?
They're on the east, but they're in plain sight of National Avenue.
They face Proven Power.
The face Proven
The
Power,
doors.
but you see them from the road.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not like it's
Yeah,
turned
but
away,
it's not the front of their building,
but it's in plain sight, is what I'm
yeah.
trying to get at here. And this is only 3 doors.
Yeah, then you have 5 doors on the back.
Right.
And if we turn it sideways, you're gonna possibly see 5 doors from the road then.
But that's facing in the contractor's yard, which, like you said, the property that surrounds me is industrial. And if, once my business is there, you could get interest in another business to put,
Yeah.
that somebody else buys and starts to develop another business over there.
Yeah, because you have the
And it all starts
office,
to-
the office in front there breaking up the structure of the building, and I don't have a problem with seeing 3 garage doors from the road.
Somebody puts up a fire department, the doors are facing the road. It's-
Well, we have to.
Yeah. So,
Well, and yes, and Mr. Walter was on a different plan commission, so, but, point well taken. Same with the building materials, too.
mm.
Right.
This is a general question regarding the planting. Is there a deadline for that planting and when it's supposed to be 10 feet high,
It's supposed to be a time of planting,
that they're 10 feet?
correct.
Okay.
And plantings of at least 10 feet in initial height are required along the exterior
Oh, I
fence.
see it. I missed the initial height.
Yep.
Sorry. Thank
Mhm.
you.
If there's 500 feet from there to the expressway, I'm not sure what that's gonna do.
Well,
There might be another building right behind us.
there could be eventually, there definitely could be.
There might be another building
I
to
mean,
the west of it.
In essence, the fence itself is gonna screen almost everything. The plantings at this point are just to break up a big fence and make
Right,
it look a little
right.
nicer.
Could that same function be served by putting in lattice work? I don't know if that's the right word. Is that a sentry fence with the,
Here's the problem, is that the conditional use itself has a very specific condition that's in the code
okay,
that says, what does it say? a planting screen of at least 10 feet high in initial height shall be provided between the abutting property line and the proposed use. And so we're saying put that up against the fence because that's the logical place for it to break that fence up. But we have to have plantings of at least 10 feet high to meet the conditional use requirements. There's no wiggle room in that.
Sean, one thing we haven't talked about is the letter of credit that's required.
Correct.
Is that going to be part of our CU, plan of operation, or some other approval?
Before we leave Fred's
Okay,
point, did you
sorry.
have a follow-up to that?
Yes, yes. It has to go back to that 10 feet, okay, and an initial height. I don't know what you're going to put in there. Arborvitae's might be the easiest way, I'm not sure, but they're not critical to what's going on in the area with
Yeah.
light. But 10-foot arborvitae, okay, can be very expensive.
I don't disagree with you, but the conditional use requirements of the
Okay.
zoning says what it says, so
All right.
we don't have any, unless we amend the ordinance, conditional uses, if they have to meet the conditions set aside in the conditional use permit, so our hands are tied unless we amend the ordinance.
No, thank you.
We can always determine how many trees.
You don't,
go in.
yeah,
It
we don't,
all
it
have to be
doesn't
in a
say
line.
that you have to
Right.
have one every 10 feet.
You know,
Point taken, thank you. Thank you.
Increase or increase,
It'd be more important if you had some retail business next door, or residential, or apartment buildings, or, I don't.
yeah, Ben pointed out that there's some wiggle room, that the screening requirements can be increased or decreased based on compatibility with
Right.
adjoining properties, so I guess that would mean not only spacing between them, but if we felt that 10 feet was too high, is that what you're saying?
I think that's, I guess, how I interpret it, that if it's,
I do know when I talked to Amy about this originally, she'd said that was one of the conditions that you guys were going to have.
I mean, I think we feel very
was-
strongly
was
about
10
site
feet.
screening for this use, that's critical for it to be compatible. And so 10 feet may be appropriate, I'm just pointing out that there is some flexibility.
Okay.
If there's just cause to warrant it.
So now would be the time, obviously, to address that, because even though we haven't approved the landscape plan's coming back, but we need to set the condition now. So if we amend that condition from 10 feet to something else, it has to happen before we approve the conditional use.
What is the county's situation on height?
I think we want to make sure that the site is screened, and if that means 10 feet, then we may stick to our guns.
Okay.
Ultimately, I can't speak to what the Plan Commission will do, but county staff do feel that
10 feet?
that serves an important purpose, that in this case, not an arbitrary
All right,
height.
but they don't have a situation regarding the distance between them.
I mean, I think we'd have to look at the plan. Again, we haven't, the
No,
difficulty here is that
agreed.
none
Yeah,
of us
we
are
don't have a
commenting on a
plan,
plan.
yeah.
We're talking
no
very
plan.
hypothetically, so.
It's hard to, yeah.
You know, what if it was more like 8 feet, the height of the fence?
At initial planting,
Yeah.
they're gonna grow higher anyways. It's-
They will,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, and part of
I mean,
it's, we don't know what species is being offered. If it's an
Right.
arborvitae,
We've been-
I
yeah.
think that may work, and if it's a slow grower, maybe
Yeah.
it won't. Hard to really say without a plan.
And so, and going back to the landscaping plan, I wouldn't even have known that we had to have it all around the fence, because other communities don't require it. So that's why it's something we don't want to throw in there or not have in there, not knowing what is needed.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, you asked about the letter of credit.
Letter of credit, how that fits in here, and when that decision needs to be made.
Well, if we don't have questions for the applicant about that, then that can wait till the,
Is there any problem with providing a letter of credit? Our ordinance says, letter of credit to be provided by the town, provided to the town to assure landscaping, drainage, and paving work are installed as approved and completed within 6 months of occupancy, unless extended by the Plan Commission. Is there any issue with that?
No.
Okay.
we won't know that amount until we get approved drainage and
Right? We can't set
landscape
it.
plans.
We can't
so-
set
Right, we
it yet.
can't set it,
No.
but the fact, I was just asking if there's an objection to requiring one.
We, before they get their building permit, we would know what it is.
Right. Yeah, we've done it before. We typically do it.
So that one stays.
That one stays. So in the landscaping, the height, the number and all, we just have to wait for the plan, it seems to be.
We can definitely wait to see what it is.
And I know on one side of the property, it is well screened already, so there's no,
It doesn't make any sense to
there's
add more.
more, right. All we'd have to do is say that gets maintained on that side.
Yeah, certainly, we would certainly accept
The east
existing
side,
vegetation if
yeah.
it serves the purpose. There's no need to
Yeah,
mess with it.
right. It'll look better anyway if it's existing.
So in terms of exceptions, we now know that everything that's required to be asphalt or concrete is going to be asphalt or concrete. That's not an issue anymore. The letter of credit's not an issue. The only thing that it's an issue for exception is the architecture. And so we're asking them, are we still asking to come back with the site plan to rotate the building or potentially try to rotate the building? Or just to move the parking to the west
As an
side?
option, I guess that would.
To like to see
yeah, let's-
to see an option as to how it lays out.
But at least they would have to meet the requirements of the architectural and the rest of the building. You mentioned something like some stone or something on there, cultured stone
On
or,
The office
We've
portion.
got a 4-foot ribbon
Yeah.
of brick pattern around the whole building and the office right now. I could change and do stone on the office, in full height, up to, above the windows, just below the roof line.
yeah.
I could do that.
And
That
is
would
there-
help, that would help to meet the 50% requirement. It may not get us quite there, but it would help.
There's a requirement that it wrap around the corners 25 feet? Is that-
Correct, right. So we want to see all sides of the office
Yes,
to be that material.
but then on the building, I would have a brick.
4-foot
pattern,
band.
4-foot brick ribbon pattern in concrete all the way around the entire building. The shop area.
That's your business after
Yeah.
all.
That's the easy part.
That's the easy part, right?
Would that be painted or sprayed then, Doug, to have a
I'll probably paint it,
contrasting color or something? You know?
probably paint it so it, well, I want to make sure it does not mess with the look of the office,
Yeah,
stonework,
yeah.
so I guess that'll be determined.
Okay, so we'll see that next time.
That'll get us some of the way there anyway.
It'll probably get us, it'll probably get us to 30 to 40% of the front of the building.
Yeah, I think there's less concern on the rear and the far sides of the building.
And there's no requirements for those.
Oh, facing a street, okay, that's what you're saying. Further questions or concerns from the town board or plan commission? Any further comments from the county or Sean, Mr. Meinen? Any member of the public? Shall we close it? Last call. Okay, we'll close. We will close the public hearing for, the request CU 40, the conditional use permit in accordance with Waukesha County and Vernon zoning for the contractor's yard. The next item on the agenda, Mr. Meinen, you're excused for now. We're going to be back shortly, I hope, on the last public hearing. The next item is, and I'll read it on the agenda, we're still under 4, the third public hearing. Another public hearing will be held to consider the request CU 41 of Taylor Daly from Steeple Point Homes to obtain a conditional use permit in accordance with Waukesha County Shoreline and Floodland Protection Ordinance for land altering activities associated with new home construction owned by James and Eileen Watkins, as described as follows. It's in the agenda. It is Lot 19 of Creekside Estates, which is off of Center Drive. So this is, Sean, I don't know how much you have to say about this one, but this is more of a county.
This property is entirely within county shoreline jurisdiction where the land disturbance triggers the conditional use application. So I think Ben has a brief overview.
Yeah, real quick here. The subject property is located at the corner of Center Drive and Overlook Drive and is part of the Creekside Estates subdivision, which was platted in 2007. The lands that surround the subject lot are zoned and/or used for residential purposes. An approved master grading plan was a requirement of final plat approval for Creekside Estates. In addition, the developer was required to conduct Form A seasonal groundwater tests on most of the lots in order to establish minimum basement elevations on the plat, which met groundwater separation requirements of the county stormwater ordinance. Having said that, the soil conditions on the subject property did not warrant a Form A test requirement at that time. Therefore, Lot 19, the subject property, had no minimum basement elevation established on the subdivision plat. Suggested rear and front yard grades were also established for every lot as part of the master grading plan. In this case, they suggested front and rear yard grades of 827.5 feet above sea level. The petitioner is making this conditional use request in order to propose a new single-family residence and associated grading that substantially diverge from the master grading plan, thus triggering this conditional use requirement. Form A test was conducted on the subject lot. I think what happened is they did some tests for septic and realized that groundwater was quite a bit higher than they had anticipated. I believe it's a mound system proposed for, so obviously we're dealing with some high groundwater out here. Based on that groundwater discovery and based on the desire to have a basement and not just a crawl space in the home, they propose to raise up the elevations on the property, and they're going to be doing this by proposing approximately 7 to 8 feet of additional fill to perch the home site on, which will allow the basement to meet the required groundwater separation and not be intercepted with groundwater and meet the county requirements. And so we're looking for a recommendation from the town to the County Plan Commission regarding these additional land altering activities. We would condition this that the town engineer will get a chance to review the approved plan prior to permit issuance.
Mr. Daly, is that Mr. Daly?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Steve Wamser.
Are you
Taylor
Steve?
applied
Okay.
for the permit. So, can you
Okay.
want me to come up there?
Yeah, please.
Sorry.
And please state your name for the record.
I am Steve Wamser,
And you are with who? Steeple Point?
Steeple Point Homes.
Okay. So the overview that you heard, is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate. We went to just do a survey on the property and move the mound system and just survey the home. And we ended up doing a Form A soil test, and we had to bring the house out of the ground a little more. So that's how this happened.
Approximately how much fill are you talking about?
I don't know, do you have the full volumes calculated in terms of 7 to 8 feet would be the extent of the highest fill areas around the foundation? I'm not sure what total.
I don't have how many loads are needed. I mean, we're still probably gonna have to take some soil off the property, actually, because it's a big ranch, but basically, all we did was create a little exposure in the back right corner of the home plan. So they're just gonna have some lookout windows from their basement now.
Sean, this is really just under county jurisdiction, I think. What kind of, would the town require anything, a conditional use for this?
No,
For this
no,
request? My
no.
understanding is we wouldn't.
We do not have land altering activities as a conditional use in the town. Assuming that you recommend approval of this and the county approves the conditional use, it'd come back to us at building permit time. So when they apply for a building permit, our building inspector would review it. If he has questions about the grading, he would ask our town engineer to take a look at the grading plan. There may be a fee associated with that. And so I would just note that if you recommend approval of this, that it's recommended that that obviously the building inspector has the right to engage the town engineer and review the grading plan when it's submitted, and that there may be a chargeback and all fees shall be paid to the town prior to building permit approval. Just looking at the layout itself, and I'm not an engineer, it's fairly straightforward. It's everything's kind of raised up from all directions. It's one mound. Everything ties back into existing grading, so it looks like the water is all going the same place on all four sides as it did prior. But if Vince, our inspector, decides that he needs a second opinion, then he will ask our town engineer.
That's been done in that subdivision several times.
What was that, Karen?
The engineer has been called upon to review the grading plans or the
Okay.
change in any type of grading.
Yeah. We didn't get any copy of that. Is that a topo map or?
Yeah, it's the grading. And I haven't seen this till tonight either. Do you want me to pass it around and everybody?
Yeah.
I've got another one here if you want to see.
My concern is how is that going to affect the properties around that?
Right,
You know,
right.
We're
And I
going
think
to
that's
have,
that's certainly a fair question. One of the concerns is always when you're perching a house on this fill is sort of avoiding that anthill effect
Right.
that we've seen in various parts of the state. And our evaluation based on the site visit is that the lots are spread out enough and that the most sensitive neighbor, which is probably the person here, is just the site distances just aren't going to create that kind of odd effect.
But the building inspector will almost certainly ask the engineer, because he has in the past, and so we'll make that assessment and we'll recommend, if he's got an issue, he'll recommend changes to it at that
I
time.
guess my concern is where it's located too, right on the corner of the entrance of the subdivision.
Yeah, it's gonna sit up fairly high.
Right.
I mean, the lot is over 2 acres, the lot behind it is vacant, and it's down below, so, I don't know,
And how's that going to affect the drainage for that subdivision?
you can look at the grading plan, yeah, right next to, on the lot, there's a drainage easement actually in the corner.
Okay.
One requirement of a county conditional use permit is that the applicants need to obtain a county stormwater permit, and they will
Okay.
be reviewing all of those concerns as part of that permit.
All right.
Any further questions, comments from the town board or the plan commission? Is there anybody in the public that wishes to comment other than Steeple Point? Yes, ma'am.
My husband and I are the developers, and we have absolutely no objection to what they want to do.
Kathy, you want to state your name?
Yes.
My name is Pat Dahl, my husband is Art.
There's no problem there at all. The county has made a lot of lots require fill. I didn't agree with it, and I still don't agree with it, because on this particular lot, there was an old farmhouse with a full basement. We were in it, we paid thousands and thousands of dollars to have it ripped out. And that basement was as dry as could be, and it was a deep basement. That house was on that particular lot that Steepleville wants to build a house. There's all trees behind this particular lot. No one will see it. I own the lot right next to this one, and I'm trying to sell it now, and they're all high and dry. I have an objection to the county really requiring what they require, because it's making it really tough on people out there to develop houses because they gotta drag in so much fill. The houses right in back of it are way up high because the county requires so much fill. As far as I'm concerned, it's ridiculous. I'm sorry, but I do feel that way because I don't like their restrictions.
You said there is a Form A that was done for this recently, and
It established a minimum basement elevation of,
so how far below the surface was the groundwater?
they found groundwater, well, they have a mound system that should tell you that they found it pretty quickly. I believe they could have done a 3-foot basement, is that correct? 3-foot basement?
Yeah, I mean, I've got the seasonal I've got the report right here.
I think 823
with the different pits.
was minimum basement elevation on the Form A.
On the front, yes,
And I think your top of footing is a few inches above that.
right. Yep, proposed basement floor elevation is 823. Elevation of seasonal high water table was 822, so.
So whether or not this was under county jurisdiction or town, the town would have the same exact requirement, because we require basements 1 foot above seasonal high groundwater. So if that was the case in county jurisdiction or town, it would be the same way, or you wouldn't have a basement. If you want a basement, you gotta lift it up. If you don't, then that would be fine too.
We do run into Form As that we have to do, particularly in Waukesha County throughout the year. So this is typical that we have to raise up the house a little bit, so.
How high are these basement walls proposed to be?
In this house, these walls are, it's a 9-foot basement.
Does it have to be 9?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because that's what the customer wants.
That's what I figured.
We did reach out to builder and owner. We did think that based on natural grades out here, that a fuller exposure could avoid a lot of the fill based on, and you wouldn't have to cut. It kind of, the grades present themselves for that. Ultimately, for economics or just choice of customer, they propose to pursue this plan. But again, we do, short of something coming up at this hearing, we do believe we could be supportive of that plan, even if it's not our first choice of how we might like to see it done.
It's a beautiful home they're building, and we totally do not have any objection whatsoever. It's a beautiful home, it will enhance the area and increase values in the area. I'm a mortgage banker, and I know what I'm talking about. Sorry.
We typically do 9-foot basements in our homes nowadays. There's not,
Well,
it's,
typically, right?
yeah. Actually, Mr. EMC would tell us probably that 9-foot basements are common.
EMC probably hopes for 10 foot someday.
We'll stay away from that.
Footings
Further,
don't work out that way.
pardon me?
The footings don't work out that way.
Right.
The forms.
There's a limit somehow. Any further questions, concerns?
If I could just mention that our ordinance, again, asks for your participation to establish any conditions of a recommendation. And so if landscaping screening to soften the view of concerns would be appropriate, that's certainly something that you could recommend to the County Plan Commission to incorporate into that permit if you see fit.
Right, this will be number 10 on our agenda when we get past the public hearings. Okay, any further comments from the public regarding Creekside Estates number 19 from the board or the Plan Commission? Planner, county? Ready to close the public hearing? Okay, we'll close your public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 10 on the agenda for action item. The last public hearing, back with Mr. Minen. I'll open the public hearing and read the notice. Town of Vernon, Town Board and Plan Commission will conduct a joint public hearing immediately after the three that we just heard. To consider the Town of Vernon's request to change Section 300-22, capital B, sub 12 of the Town of Vernon zoning code to reduce the minimum lot area for contractors' yards as a conditional use from 5 acres to 3 acres in B3 and I1 districts. Now, we had our first public hearing, we talked about amending the map, and then we went through conditional use, then we did Steeple Point, and now this public hearing is to consider the change to our zoning code. So Sean, why don't you?
I'll be very brief.
Kick it off for that.
Yep, we've discussed this to some degree through the last few public hearings, and so we're anticipating or proposing a change to the town's code. The county is proposing a similar change to their code, although we're not talking about that tonight. Contractors' yards are allowed in the Ag District, the B1, B2, B3, and I1 districts in the town. What we're proposing is that just in the B3 and the I1 districts, the minimum size goes from 5 acres to 3 acres. The purpose of this is to allow some flexibility for the size of the yards where it's appropriate for smaller operations, but just limiting it to districts that allow more intensive uses. So where you can have more going on a particular property, like B3 and I1, it's limited to those. In the ag districts, B1 and B2, we're still going to stick with the 5 acres because we want to allow more space to be more compatible with the surroundings. The only change that we're proposing is under section 300-22B12, where it currently reads, the minimum lot area shall be at least 5 acres. We are extending that to say in all districts where allowed, except the B3 and I1 districts where the minimum lot area shall be 3 acres, and that's it.
County, I think that's all consistent.
Yeah, I mean, it's town code stuff.
Mr. Minen, I'm not sure if you have anything to add to that, do you? Shaking his head no for the record. Is there any members of the public that wish to comment on this item? I see no members of the public. Board and Plan Commission.
In regard to the county's position, is there going to be any serious objection in changing the zoning on this property?
The zoning or what we're discussing?
Yes.
I don't anticipate that. From a staff perspective,
Will you be recommending approval by you? You're the one here sitting here tonight, so.
yeah, I mean, I think we need to see, so I do believe that it would be a recommendation for a conditional approval based on seeing what we need to
Okay.
see on the missing information.
Not
so.
only us, that we spin our wheels here and then the county says no, we wasted a lot of time and
Sure.
that gentleman's time too.
No, and we've been in conversations with the
Okay.
applicant, so
All right.
we're well aware and working with him.
Further comments, questions?
Wasn't it the county that initiated this in the beginning, or?
At the request of the county. The county has gone out of its way to try to expedite this whole process.
Yes, the county has been very helpful.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't aware of that.
And just for the record, let me state too that the first two public hearings also relate to this fourth public hearing, and we'll just incorporate by reference to those. Incorporate the information presented at the first two public hearings into this public hearing, so we don't have to go through it again. I just want to state for the record to make that clear. Further questions, comments from the public? Mr. Minen, County, John? Nothing? Okay, we will close the last public hearing for tonight and move to agenda items. Well, it's not too bad, 8:27. Not time for a break yet? Item 6, discussion and possible action. This is and again, we're trying to take these one at a time and very specifically so we don't miss something. In order of the agenda, discussion and possible action to amend the district zoning maps of Waukesha County Shoreline and Floodland Protection Ordinance and the Town of Vernon zoning code from A5 Mini Farm District to the B3 General Business District, which was subject to the public hearing that we just had. There's 4 items underneath 6, and as our attorney reminds us, these are policy decisions. Each action item is a separate matter, acted on independently. Order of the action items was carefully formulated, and please carefully review the conditions in your town planner staff report and include in your discussion as we see fit, but I think we'll defer to Sean to make sure that we make sure that those conditions are clear to everyone before we take any action on them.
So on page 2 of my staff report, I broke down the action items into 2 parts. One is the county action, and the second is the town. So under the county action, the only conditions I have is that is the rezoning itself from A5 to B3. The rezone shall not be in full force and effect until approved by the Waukesha County Board of Supervisors, and it shall not be in full force and effect until the petitioner obtains approval of the conditional use that's been requested. So we can take action tonight and recommend action tonight, but the rezone doesn't actually happen until those conditions are met.
Okay, which staff we've got three reports. I just want to
The rezone.
make it clear to everybody. So this is the one that is called D&J and Sons rezoning.
Rezoning request. There's only 2 pages to this one, it's on page 2.
It's on page 2, so you see the paragraph, Town of Vernon zoning, and Sean just went through
Yeah,
it.
so we're under Waukesha County zoning right now.
Waukesha County zoning, so the first one is the Plan Commission recommendation on the district zoning map of Waukesha County Shoreline and Floodland Protection Ordinance from A5 Mini Farm District to B3 General Business District. And it's a recommendation to, this would be the Plan Commission, recommendation to Waukesha County and to the Vernon Town Board.
Correct.
Right?
Subject to those 3
the
conditions.
following, yes. Subject to the conditions that Sean read.
I'll make that motion you just stated.
Seconded.
Okay? Let's get them right, as long as I said it. Discussion by the Plan Commission. No discussion? Sean, you're good with the conditions as stated?
Correct.
What is the county zoning on this property?
It's B3, but it's really A5 because they didn't meet the proven power, didn't meet the conditions of that approval, so it would revert back to A5 as well.
Okay.
So the maps say B3, but technically it's A5 because they didn't meet the conditions of the B3 rezone.
Further discussion by the Plan Commission. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, item 6B. It's the Town Board recommendation on the district zoning map of the Waukesha County Shoreland and Floodline Protection Ordinance from A5 Mini Farm District, as Ben just answered, to the B3 General Business District, and the recommendation is to Waukesha County. And on that one, Sean, it's the same
Same thing,
Same terms, same
Correct.
conditions.
I'll make that same motion.
I'll
No,
second
second.
that. Well, go ahead, Fred.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion by the town board on its recommendation to Waukesha County. Ben, are you happy with the recommendation, with the conditions? Okay. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? This is town board. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, now we are on 6C. It's a Plan Commission recommendation on the district zoning map of the Town of Vernon zoning code from A5 Mini Farm District to the B3 General Business District. And the recommendation is from the Plan Commission to the Vernon Town Board. So this is Plan Commission action. Sean?
I have the same exact conditions as part of this, except the additional one that the petitioner reimburse the town of Waukesha, or town of Vernon for any expense.
I would make a motion that we approve this and recommend to the town board approval,
Subject to the,
subject to
To
the
the-
conditions as stated by Sean.
in his report, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion by Plan Commission. Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we're on 6D. This is town board action. On the district zoning map of the town of Vernon zoning code from A5 mini farm district to B3 general business district, again, subject to the conditions as stated in the full planning Sean's report. This is town board action. So we're looking for our action, town board action to our zoning map and zoning code, zoning map.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion by the town board. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Unanimous. Okay, number 7. Discussion and possible, I gotta make sure I stay on mine too. On the attorneys and on my notes. Discussion and possible, excuse me, action to request to change section 300-22B12 of the Town of Vernon zoning code to reduce the minimum lot areas for contractor's yard as a conditional use from 5 acres to 3 acres in B3 and I1 districts. And again, this was subject to our public hearing that we just closed. Sean, are there conditions on that?
The only conditions are the clarification of the language that's being added that accepts B3 and I1 from the 5 acre minimum down to 3, and then second, that the zoning ordinance text amendment shall not be in full force and effect until approved by Waukesha County Board of Supervisors.
Right. And this is, both of those conditions are listed on Sean's memo. The ray line is zoning ordinance amendment, contractor's yard conditional use. It's 2 pages. So we're clear on which report we're talking about in the conditions. So the first item is a the Vernon Plan Commission recommendation to the Vernon Town Board. We're on 7A.
I'll make a motion that the Plan Commission recommend approval to the Vernon Town Board with the conditions as stated in Sean's report.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Discussion by Plan Commission. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now 7B is town board action. And it's a town board action to change section 300-22B12 of the Town of Vernon zoning code to reduce the minimum lot area for contractor's yard as a conditional use from 5 acres to 3 acres in the B3 and I1 districts, subject to, Sean's, same condition, Sean, is that correct? Is that a concurrence or a approval? What do we say? Concurs with the Plan Commission. Okay,
I'll make the motion.
to concur
Concur.
with the Plan Commission recommendation, subject to the same,
That's the conditions.
right. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, this is town board. Any comments by town board? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries by the town board. Okay, now, item 8. Discussion and possible action on the request of D&J and Sons to obtain a conditional use permit in accordance with the Town of Vernon zoning code for a contractor's yard in order to accommodate a business that stores foundation equipment on property, as stated in the agenda, owned by Proven Properties, but now owned by D&J and Sons, which was subject to the public hearing that we had earlier this evening. And again, the Attorney Macy reminds us about the law in this regard. If the petitioner has presented substantial evidence for their conditional use, that they have or will satisfy all the requirements and conditions, conditional use must be approved. Please work through the worksheet, our matrix. Sean will lead us through that. And we would be looking first for the Plan Commission to make a recommendation to the Vernon Town Board, and then have the Town Board take action on the recommendation. So this will be the lengthy Sean's memo,
We can go right to the worksheet.
and go right to, yes. We can go to the worksheet.
Let's work through that, and we have to modify a couple of these conditions based on what happened during the public hearing. And so if you turn to page 2 of the worksheet, and we'll just start at the top, these are the specific conditions for a contractor's yard, and you'll see the first one, letter A, has been modified to reduce it to 3 acres per action that was just taken. And so the question is, we'll quickly go through these. Is the condition requirement applicable? And so if we'll just work with the Plan Commission here, and then after we'll just ask if the board concurs with the findings of the Plan Commission. So
The board members should pay attention.
so the Plan Commission members, is that condition still applicable?
I'm joking. Karen's laughing. Sorry, Sean.
Have they,
Yes.
the 3 acre requirement applicable? Yes. Have they provided evidence that they can meet that? Yes.
The parcel is 3 acres.
Parcel is exactly just over 3 acres, so that's yes. Has any substantial evidence been provided to the contrary?
No.
No. And so the requirement's met.
Okay, any disagreement with that analysis? Okay. No disagreement.
Okay, so all buildings, so in this case, there's no residential surrounding property. They need to be at least 50 feet off the lot lines. Is that condition applicable?
Yes.
They've provided evidence they can meet that
Yes.
through the site plan. Nothing's been provided to the contrary,
No.
and so the condition's met. Has to directly front an arterial or major collector street as defined in the code. Is the condition applicable?
Yes.
Have they provided evidence of that?
Yes, that's a yes.
Nothing's been provided to the contrary, and so the condition is met. All right, so this one we may have to discuss. Planting screen of at least 10 feet high and initial height shall be provided between any abutting property line and the proposed use. The Plan Commission Board may increase or decrease the planting screen requirements based on location and compatibility of zoning and use with abutting property. So is the condition or requirement applicable, or does it need to be changed? Do we want to limit that to 8 feet instead, knowing that the opaque fence will be there? And if, we have not seen the landscape plan yet, but, we can assume that it may be a fast-growing material. It is your call.
Smaller the tree, the more likely it'll survive.
From transplanting and planting?
Yes.
That's a good point.
And I would, sorry, I would go with the 8 feet, reduce that.
Any other discussion on that? Does that,
Well, my issue is, why do we have a 10-foot standard? I mean, if we have a standard, why aren't we following the standard? If the standard should be less, then should
Well,
the
here's-
standard be changed? That
well-
would be my point.
well, the only thing I can add is that it doesn't require a fence, right? And so this just requires a planting screening. And so they're providing an opaque fence in addition to the planting screening. The planting screening still has to be addressed because it says that in the code, but the landscape screening is in a way redundant. It's largely there to soften the fence in some way. We can require 10 feet if we want to, but you should also consider that there's going to be an opaque fence there as well.
Well, and they also grow. I just coincidentally put some arborvitaes in 2 years ago, maybe 3, and they have grown.
They're fast growing.
Yes,
But
they are.
we don't know yet that they're going to be arborvitaes because we haven't seen a
excuse me,
landscape
I'm being
plan.
presumptuous, right?
Right.
Right.
But if it was arborvitaes, they popped up real quick and are very durable.
To me, a planting screen would be all along the lot line.
You
I'm
can't
not
really
sure in
see
this-
through it, right, Jan? Is that what you're saying? You can't, a screen is a screen, you can't see through it, or, maybe the branches or.
Well, it does say between the line and the use, right? And that's what, so it's anywhere between the property line and the use is where, the condition requires that. You're saying a screen is usually on the property line for adjacent properties, and that's true. But the intent here is just somewhere between the use and the lines that there's a screen that's established.
But most of the people would be viewing it from their car,
Right.
which means their head height is about, what, 5 foot max off the ground? So why go to 10 feet? You know, why force the businesses to go that tall right away?
I don't know how much higher National Avenue is from the parcel off the top of my head, but it might be above.
It's actually lower.
Is it lower?
Yeah, it's, my recollection of that area, it's
Yeah, it's
at least level, and I would go along with a little lower.
We do have a topo map on it, but I guess my question here is, what are we screening it from? When we've got industrial property next door, and the expressway is 500 feet away, the fence itself provides a screen. I think all we need is landscaping to break up.
To soften the fence.
To soften the building. I don't know if I can really call it a screen.
Then why don't we just say a planting screen shall be provided between the abutting property line and the proposed use? Or planting shall be provided. Planting shall be provided between the abutting property line and the proposed use. We already know, there's another condition coming that requires them to submit the landscape and screening plan, so we're going to review it again.
And I agree with what both of you guys have said. I thought that it was a requirement that they 10 feet.
And I did, when I responded to you, I did too as well, and
Thank you.
until Ben pointed it out, to
Right.
say, hey, we have some discretion here.
All right, thank you.
So we're gonna, sounds like we're gonna soften the condition to say a planting screen shall be provided between the abutting property line. I'm sorry, not screen. A planting shall be provided between the abutting property line and proposed use. And they're gonna come back for the plan itself. Does that satisfy your concern, Commissioner?
Yes.
When you say a planting, does that mean one?
No, not a planting, planting. Planting shall be provided.
It's little.
Well, we're gonna have one tree.
Ben, does the county have, we're changing language here, does the county see any issues with that? We want to keep these conditional uses, to me, consistent, if nothing else for the owner. To try to comply with two even small differences in CUs is be crazy. To try to comply with, it seems to me that they should be identical, absent some very good reason.
We have closed the public hearing, so we should.
Yeah, I shouldn't be asking you that, I should be asking.
And certainly, we would take a condition like that, and if the county thinks they want to see a minimum height, they could certainly be more restrictive than your condition. I mean, I think the concerns for contractors' yards are the storage component of it, not so much the building. You're addressing those through architectural requirements, so on and so forth. It looks like a fairly attractive building with the facades and materials, but I think we want to ensure that we don't see the storage piece of it. I mean, that's what we're screening. It's not the B3 use, it's the B3 conditional use, which is the contractor's yard component of it. So I think that's just something to keep in mind, that even if it's a business district, an office building may not want to locate near a storage yard, and it may adversely impact the adjacent commercial uses or future uses.
Sean, do you think we're going to be protected enough with the landscape plan and how that's going to get approved?
Sure, because we're not issuing the conditional use permit until we approve the landscape plan and the screening plan, so we have full control over that.
Okay.
Well, like Sean stated, the fence is not required, right?
Correct.
And they're providing a fence, so we just want something just to soften the fence, maybe.
So, as modified, is that condition or requirement applicable?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, have they provided evidence they can meet that? They are coming
No.
back for a landscape plan.
They will with the plan.
Right.
The site plan they
plan
provided does show the opaque fence at a minimum, so that's already on there. There's certainly room to put plantings around. as shown on the plan itself, and they have agreed to come back and present that to us.
There is some wording in there that the commission can feel confident that they will meet our requirements or something. in
Yeah, that they
there, so
will, not that they do, but that they will.
Right.
That's correct. So you feel they've provided evidence that they will meet that?
Yes.
No evidence has been provided to the contrary, and so the condition is met. And then finally, in determining whether or not the proposed conditional use should be approved, the town board, upon receipt of a recommendation of the plan commission, shall make a determination that the proposed conditional use is compatible with adjacent land uses. Is this compatible as presented with adjacent land uses?
Yes.
Yes.
And largely because adjacent land uses are planned for commercial uses. Nothing's been provided to the contrary, and so the condition's met. Do we want the board to affirm all of those, Mr. Chairman?
When we get there, how's that?
Okay.
We'll do them, we'll circle back and do the,
And so on page 3, these are the general conditional use criterias. And so the determination of whether or not to approve or deny the use shall be made by the town plan commission, shall be based on the consideration of whether or not the proposed use will violate the spirit and intent of the comp plan of the zoning ordinance, be contrary to the public health, safety, and welfare, be hazardous, harmful, noxious, offensive, or a nuisance by reason of appearance, noise, dust, smoke, odor, or other similar factors. Is that applicable?
I'd say yes.
Yes.
Have they provided evidence, has the petitioner provided evidence that the use will not violate those?
That almost gets into the contractor yard generally. I mean,
Generally, but in terms of how it's situated, where it's situated, the parcel itself, in relation to the other.
Uses of the abutting properties.
Uses of abutting properties, the potential screening of it, the hours of operation, all those things are part of it. And so in a general sense, do you think it will violate the comp plan, the code, or be harmful to the town and surroundings?
no. We got commissioners shaking their heads, no. No. Okay.
All right, so they provide substantial evidence, nothing's been provided to the contrary, and so the condition is met. Except as may be specifically or otherwise provided for by the code, any such use shall conform to any building location, height, and area regulations of the district it's located. I went through my staff report, I've noted that they meet all the requirements of the zoning ordinance from a quantitative standpoint. And so the condition is applicable, they provided evidence that they'll meet that, nothing's been provided to the contrary, and the condition's been met. Agree? Okay. And then my specific conditions, I didn't list everything here in terms of the general conditions, but we have listed some of the more substantive, and so the approval is listed, limited to Doug Minan, DBA, D&J and Sons, and EMC Foundations for the property as we discussed. The uses and activities are for a poured foundation business, including the office use. And now, these particular conditions we have obviously massaged and changed and generalized, and I don't have them all written verbatim now. But the idea is that all of this information is going to be taken out and put into a plan of operation. Some of the things we did do is generalize the number of trucks, or I'm sorry, the types of trucks and vehicles and the numbers. We've changed the hours of operation from 5:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and we've asked the applicant to come back and provide us an updated plan of operation that will be inserted as a plan of operation and not in the permit itself. And so, are these conditions still applicable? Yes? Have they provided evidence that they do or will meet these requirements?
Yes.
Nothing's been provided to the contrary, and so the condition is met. There's a condition here that the approval should not be in full force and effect until such time the petitioner has ownership of the property. We have learned tonight that they have already taken ownership of the property, so the condition is applicable. They provided evidence that they'll meet that. Nothing's been provided to the contrary, and so the condition is met. Then there's a list of 6 items by letter here. Again, that the conditional use shall not be full force and approval until such time the petitioner obtains the necessary approvals and satisfies all comments, conditions, and concerns of the town board after receipt of a recommendation from the plan commission for a rezoning of the property to B3. We know that's already happened at a town level. The town board, after receipt of a recommendation from the town plan commission in Waukesha County for a text amendment to the respective zoning ordinances, reducing the minimum lot area to 3 acres for contractors' yards in the B3 district. The town plan commission board has already taken that action as well. The town board, after receipt of a recommendation from the town of Vernon Plan Commission for a landscape plan, including screening and fencing, we know that's, the petitioner has agreed to bring that back for plan commission and board approval. The town board, after receipt of a recommendation from the town plan commission for a lighting plan. And then you can, let's take off the planting information. We know it's not going to be 10 feet anymore, so let's take that off. We also have asked them to come back for a site plan, which is not on here, that we need to add. So the town board, after receipt of a recommendation for the town plan commission for revised site plan. And then also plan of operation. And then finally, in terms of Waukesha County approvals, the Waukesha County Department of Land Resources for the Stormwater Management Plan and Maintenance Agreement, and then the Town of Vernon Building Inspector and Waukesha County Department of Land Resources for erosion control. And so, are those all applicable?
Yes.
Yes. As the applicant provided evidence that he will meet those requirements, or intends to meet those requirements?
Yes.
And nothing's been provided to the contrary, and so that condition has been met.
What about the architectural issues, John?
Yeah, so I mentioned the site plan is coming back.
Okay.
And so we should, you're right, I missed the architectural, the materials as well. So site plan and architectural plans. Does everyone agree that condition is relevant? Okay,
Everybody shaking their head yes.
all right, sounds
For the
good.
record?
And so the findings from the Plan Commission is that the applicant has met or will meet all the required conditions of the conditional use permit.
Plan Commission consensus is that right? We went through the
Yes.
Yes, yes?
Yes.
I'm saying yes. Okay, we went through them fast. Any further comments from the Plan Commission?
No, no.
Okay, so under, okay, where are we now? Gotta make sure I'm in the right spot. Under item 8, right on the agenda, discussion and possible action on the request of D&J and Sons to obtain a conditional use permit in accordance with the Town of Vernon zoning code for a contractor's yard. A is a Plan Commission recommendation to the Vernon Town Board. And I think you have those motions right on your matrix.
Page 6.
Yes, exactly, page 6 of the matrix.
Right.
Those, I have, Plan Commission and Board.
Yeah, you would move to recommend to the
This
town
is,
board
this
approval.
is, this is simply, for the town items, not for the county
Right,
conditional use permit, so this would be for the town version of that, yes.
right.
And so I'd also note that there's a checkbox that says included only if applicable, the conditions stated within the conditional use order shall be modified in the manner, and so that is applicable because we have made modifications to several conditions tonight.
Right. And we are on item 8. So this is Plan Commission recommendation to the Vernon Town Board, and 8B is the town board action. Agenda item 9 then would be, just to make sure everybody's clear on this, would be action on the CU 40, which is a county designation. So there, the Plan Commission would be recommending to the town board and the county that the county grant the conditional use. And then letter B on 9 is the town board recommendation to Waukesha County based on the Plan Commission recommendation. So we're on item 8, just to be, and we're doing this step by step. So item 8 is the town CU. Item 9 is the recommendation to the county. Does that make sense? So we are on item 8, Plan
Yeah.
Commission.
I would make a motion that the Plan Commission recommend to the town board approval of the conditional use for Doug Minden, along with the conditions as we just went through, as amended or modified.
As modified and stated by the,
I'll second. I'll second that.
yep.
Don't matter. It's all right.
Let's, discussion by the Plan Commission on the motion to recommend to the town board approve the CU as stated in the motion, subject to all the conditions. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries by the Plan Commission. Then, town board, now we're on letter 8B, the town board action on the conditional use.
Yep. I would move to grant the conditional use for Doug Meline.
Meinen.
Mine? Okay. Doing business as D&J and Sons LLC and EMC Foundation Incorporated as presented by the town of Vernon planner and agreed to by the applicant. The town of Vernon staff is directed to draft a conditional use order and place it in the final form consistent with the town of Vernon's discussion. The conditional stated within the conditional use order shall be modified in the manner described in the town of Vernon's discussion.
I'll second it.
Second that.
Okay, discussion. Sean, that's a good motion, enough to draft the CU and get all the conditions in. Okay. Discussion by the town board. Hearing no discussion, all, well, let me back up. Before we approve it, we should look at the matrix. I know the town board's right here and listen to the discussion by the Plan Commission and the planner through the matrix. Does the town board, and I know 3 of the members of the Plan Commission are on the town board, but the members who are not, Supervisor Wiley and Supervisor Dashick, do you concur, well, all of us really concur with the matrix as discussed and presented and found by the Plan Commission?
I do.
I agree.
Okay, and of course, Supervisor Mahalik and Millie's voted for it, so,
Yes.
as Plan Commissioners. Yeah, I want that, yeah, we'll note it for the record as part of the discussion of the motion and in the minutes so that it's clear. Anything else, Sean, before the town board takes action? Okay, all in favor, town board?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, now we are on number 9, discussion and possible action on CU 40 for D&J and Sons to obtain a conditional use permit in accordance with Waukesha County Shoreline and Floodland Protection Ordinance for a contractor's yard, as stated in the agenda. And here, what we are looking for is a Plan Commission recommendation to the Vernon Town Board and Waukesha County.
Yeah, and I think Attorney Macy had a comment about just making sure, with the recommendation to Waukesha County and the town board, so that the conditions were consistent or the same as the town's conditions.
Right, so the recommendation would be, just like we recommended to the Vernon Town Board with your conditions as stated.
Same conditions.
With the same conditions. The county follows those conditions, and the county, Ben is shaking his head yes, for the record.
Sorry, yes. It's getting late, I'm running out of words.
I'll make that motion.
Is
I'll
there,
sec-
is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Supervisor Mahalik. Discussion by the Plan Commission. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 9B, so this is the town board, what are we concurring with the Plan Commission's recommendation to Waukesha County to grant request CU 40 of D&J Sun, subject to all the same conditions as the Vernon CU.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion by the town board. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 10, Creekside Estates.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, can I,
Do we need to take a break?
for me, just a couple minutes.
We're so close.
Oh, we are close, but I won't take long.
All right, it's 9 o'clock, and I do promise breaks by 9 o'clock.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. You guys as well, sitting there patiently. We'll get to you, I'm sure. We'll take a
Short order.
short order break, 10 after 9. You got 6 minutes, is that enough?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, take a quick break from both the Plan Commission and Town Board.
Sorry, what? 12:04, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we'll call recess to close, and we'll open back our joint town board and plan commission. Open back up our plan commission and town board joint meeting. And we are on number 10, which is discussion and possible action to consider the request CU 41 from Steeple Point Homes to obtain a conditional use permit in accordance with Waukesha County's shoreline floodland production ordinance for land altering activities for new home construction on Lot 19 of Creekside Estates as set forth in the agenda. Two things here. We're looking for a plan commission recommendation to the Vernon Town Board and to Waukesha County. And then secondly, the town board's recommendation to Waukesha County. So here, I think this was also subject to a public hearing. During that public hearing, we did hear from Sean about the fact that the grading plan is going to there will be a grading plan. Town engineer will have an opportunity to review it, at least through Vince. If he needs a review, there'll be professional chargebacks. I don't know what other conditions that we need to put on our recommendation.
Building
but-
permits required, that the town engineer has the right to review it, and any fees will be reimbursed by the applicant.
So we're looking for a plan commission recommendation to the Vernon Town Board in Waukesha County with those conditions.
I'll make the recommendation. I'll make the motion to approve the recommendations.
To recommend. Right, you don't need to approve it. Make a recommendation to.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, right. Motion to recommend to the Vernon Town Board in the Waukesha County, right.
Seconded.
Do you have the motion? Okay. Discussion by Plan Commission. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Whoop, somebody's waving their
Abstain.
finger, Commissioner Nowak.
I kind of object to the fact that we have to act on this without having anything to look at and have no input or jurisdiction over this matter, really.
And I apologize, and it was sent out in the clerk's packet, I'm not sure what,
No.
okay. So I'm not sure if a mail snafu occurred, so I apologize, we sent it out, apparently, and we certainly have the plan, I understand.
Yeah,
It's hard to
yeah.
digest in a moment.
It's all the discussion I have.
Okay.
Good discussion.
Well, your discussion beat the vote, let's say, barely. Ben, Waukesha County, is that motion? Yeah.
Yeah, and if it would be helpful, I know you guys have a long checklist to meet the substantial evidence, and I understand this is probably an awkward recommendation with a lack of information. If it's helpful, one of the requirements, or we could go through the requirements of that CU in the county code. One is that they provide a grading plan from a qualified professional, a landscape architect, an engineer or surveyor, they've met that requirement. And I think the second is probably the critical one, that no such use shall create flooding, concentrated runoff, inadequate drainage, unfavorable topography, excessive erosion and sedimentation, or restrict navigation in navigable waters, which obviously doesn't apply. The use shall be designated to minimize impairment of fish and wildlife habitat and natural scenic beauty. There's some additional requirements that really are not applicable in this case, but I think that's the requirement that you're balancing the recommendation off of.
Sean, would it make sense to fold that into the motion to recommend that, or does that go without stating that the conditions is in the county?
You certainly could say that you have to meet the county conditions.
I'll make,
Friendly
amend my
amendment?
motion.
Right, friendly
include
amendment? Do we have a friendly second?
Second.
Do you have the? Okay. Further discussion from the Plan Commission? Okay, hearing none. All in favor as amended, the motion as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we are looking for Town Board, concurrence to the recommendation by the Plan Commission, subject to the same conditions.
I'd make that motion.
Is there a sec-
concur with the Plan Commission's recommendation.
Got it? Second by Supervisor Millies. Town board discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 11 is review and approval of the minutes for December 11th, 2019. That was a joint meeting. I was absent from that meeting, both on the Plan Commission and the Town Board side on December 11th, so we'll be looking, I'm going to abstain from that motion, but we'd be looking for a motion to approve first from the Plan Commission, sorry.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
December 11th minutes, right? Plan Commission, Fred and Dan. Any discussion on those minutes? I read through them, but I gave you two. Yeah, that's what I thought. Any discussion? This is Plan Commission, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, I was abstaining. Town Board.
I make a motion to approve the,
Oh, did you already?
No, thank you.
make the motion to approve the minutes from Wednesday, November 13th of the combined town board.
It'd be Wednesday, December 11th.
11th, Gary.
Sorry.
The 11th.
Oh, I'm sorry, the 11th, December 11th. I'm looking at a different minute.
Yeah, I'm thinking, yeah. You're looking at the minutes for tomorrow.
Yep.
Yep.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve, Town Board motion, to approve minutes from December 11th. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Any opposed? Motion carries with one abstention. Okay, item 12, Town Board. Unless you want to stay,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
the Town Board,
Town Board.
not the Plan
No,
Commission.
no.
Not the Plan. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Town Board motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board is adjourned. We are now on Plan Commission.
Fun.
Number 13, Plan Commission decision and possible action on the final plat request by Armed Group care of Nick Flemma for Ronald and Sarah Beam for the properties that are under Town of Vernon zoning jurisdiction located between Pheasant Hill and Oakdale Avenue from RRD 5 rural residential to R1 residential. Tax key numbers are as listed in the agenda. And Sean, why don't you kick us off on their final plat?
So the petitioner is requesting approval of the final plat. We've seen this, a bunch of times over the last year. Just to give you a quick recap, it's a 30-lot conservation subdivision. There's 2 outlots. It's west of Oakdale Drive, County Highway XX. On the northern border of the town, the main road, Pheasant Drive, as part of this, would extend from Millbrook Village subdivision and connect to Oakdale Drive at Myers Drive. Back in July of last year, the Plan Commission approved the residential development permit, the allotment for the actual subdivision and the residential units. They recommended approval of the rezoning to R1, granted a waiver for some of the lines not being perpendicular to the right-of-way, recommended approval of the cul-de-sac length waiver to the town board, and at that time, the preliminary plat was tabled. And July 18th, the town board approved the rezoning to R1, granted the waiver for the cul-de-sac length, and then on September 11th, the Plan Commission approved the preliminary plat, which was also approved by the town board, and then the rezone was also later approved by Waukesha County. So they're asking for final plat approval. The final plat is substantially consistent with the approved preliminary plat. Per comments made by the town and the county, there have been some changes made. Waukesha County conditionally approved the preliminary plat on November 11th. The gist of the changes to the final plat from the preliminary plat have to do with just adjustments to some of the lots and outlots. They've adjusted the boundaries for lots 1 and 7 to remove the wetlands. There's a 20-foot easement that's been added to the south edge of lots 29 and 30 to preserve a buffer of existing trees from the lots to the south. I have a couple of recommendations for revisions to the final plat before it gets recorded. One, this also coincides with county requirements, is that a note that the plat is subject to a master grading plan should be added to the face of the plat. Some of the notes related to the waivers need to be updated and corrected. There's a note for stormwater management on page 2 that references the drainage easements. Those are not shown on the plat. It should be clarified whether the drainage easement extends to all of Outlot 1 or just a sub-area of Outlot 1, and maybe the petitioner can speak to that when I'm finished. The purpose of Outlots 1 and 2 should be noted on the plat. The rest of it is fairly technical in nature. I'd note that so far the landscape plans have not been submitted, which is going to be required, in particular to show what's going to happen in the 20-foot, within the 50-foot landscape easement that's along Oakdale Drive. I should also note that as part of the allotment process, the petitioner is going to be providing 1 tree per 100 feet also on private property within 20 feet of the street right-of-way. There's also a land stewardship plan, open space plan that's required for Outlot 1 in terms of how that's going to be maintained. That'll also need to be approved. They're proposing signage, 2 masonry entrance signs that also would need approval at a later date. Our engineer has a couple of comments about the the final plat. We have seen some grading and construction plans for the roadways and the adjacent swales for the roadways. We have not yet seen a master grading plan for the entire property. At the outset, as sort of the preliminary plat stage in the development allotment stage, we saw a grading plan that had some issues with some of the lots that were along Oakdale Drive in the backyards. And so I just want to note that we have not seen anything to date. Our town engineer does have some concerns about the potential grading. I know Waukesha County has some concerns about grading in relation to the sanitary systems and minimizing disturbance of land as well. That's not to say it can't be done, but we just haven't seen anything in writing. And so if the final plat should be approved tonight, just know that we have not seen that. That's a condition of approval, that there cannot be any construction or recording of the final plat, whichever comes first, until that grading plan is approved. So there's a chance, depending on how things work out, not necessarily, but if something drastically would need to be changed, the final plat may have to come back for reapproval, depending. Our surveyor does have a long list of technical requirements that are very, very minor in nature. It just needs to be updated on the final plat before it gets signed. And so if the Plan Commission chooses to recommend approval to the town board, we have outlined a series of conditions. One is that they'll satisfy all comments of all approving and objecting bodies with regard to the final plat. The deed restrictions that were discussed as part of the allotment process are required, that the minimum home size shall be 1,875 square feet for single-family homes, 2,500 square feet for two-story homes. I've already mentioned the landscape requirements in the front yards, and that the home exterior wall surfaces are limited to 100% natural materials. Prior to commencing construction of any public, private, or site development improvements or recording of the final plat, whichever occurs first, the petitioner shall submit the following, subject to review and approval from first, the town board upon receipt of a recommendation from the Plan Commission, the construction civil plans, including a master grading plan, landscape plans, signage plans, declaration of covenants, restrictions, and easements, and the land stewardship plan for outlots. And then the board will approve a developer's agreement for improvements with approval as to form by the town attorney, and then the cash or letter credit as a final financial guarantee, with approval as to the amount from the town engineer. The petitioner needs to obtain necessary approvals and satisfy all comments, conditions, and concerns of the Town of Vernon engineer, Town of Vernon board, Waukesha County Department of Land Resources for stormwater management and stormwater maintenance agreement, and then the erosion control, and then satisfy all county requirements for well and septic system, and finally, just our standard reimbursement clause as well. So just, I guess the point I want to make is, we've written this for approval tonight. There are some concerns in the grading plan since we have not seen full grading of the lot, but it's not the end of the world. If things would need to be changed, it just means that the final plat would have to come back for reapproval.
Based on what you just said, should we then approve it tonight? Or wait until that comes back?
It's up to you. The thing is that if we approve it tonight, it keeps things moving along.
Right.
Just know that there's a
With a
minor
condition.
chance that the final plat would have to come back if something drastic would. And the petitioner may have comments on those as well, so.
Okay.
So what's on is for the plan commission, and I've tried to separate town board and plan commission where we can. In the event, for example, tonight, if we had to make a bunch of changes, we could at least get a cleaned up draft for final approval by the board, since the board meets, it won't be on tomorrow's agenda, but it'll be on the 23rd. So,
Could you satisfy all the technical requirements of this before the board meeting?
Well, just, again, Paul Van Hinkle, I'm the engineer, Ron Beam, the owner. The issues that came up with on the regards to the drainage easement and the size of the stormwater, somewhat's based on a meeting we had with the town engineer about what, we're looking at some road concerns about the connections and things like that, and things that he told us that. And the grading plan, we've updated the grading plan, so we're not significantly grading the lot. We're also, although we got all the lots approved for final plat, we're out there doing some more soils work to identify some specific areas for some septic systems, especially on the north end of the property. And so the dimensions on the drainage easement is somewhat dependent on the groundwater elevations. And so they're doing those diggings out there now. So it may change minorly, but it may not be much. But we can, again, I like the conditions. Until we do that, you don't want to sign the final plan. But it would help moving the process along if you make a recommendation, subject to those. All those conditions are fine with us. And again, we're working with the town's engineer, and again, we're working with the county about some of their issues. We talked to them in the transportation department. So it's all coming together, but it's kind of, you gotta do them all at the same time, the grading plan and the stormwater plan and the road plan. So we're doing it, we expect to have those done in a month or two here now. So I think that defined review letter, and most of the technical issues that we've been addressing as we've gone along. I know the first grading plan, we had a lot more disturbance, and we modified that and given it to the town engineer for his review. Our second grading plan that shows we're basically grading the road. And then when we get this, especially in the north end, when we get these pre-systems designed, here's what we're and trying to finish up. We may do some specific locations for those sites, and we may have an opportunity to add some fill in those lots to make basements more appropriate, depending on groundwater elevation. So, and same with our easement on the outlots. We want to know what that groundwater elevation, because it may vary the size, we got clay language and things like that. We've had talk to the Waukesha County Environmental Committee, I think that's their name. They sound like they're taking the January off, but we've asked them that, we're talking about adding the conservation easement for the outlet one, which is the 30-acre one. And so that's kind of what's holding up the deed restrictions and restrictions on the outlet. And both outlots will be owned by 1/30 of every lot, so then we own them all. There won't be any buildings and things like that, but if you add another layer of landscape easement for the Waukesha County.
So we would like them involved if possible. It's just a question of whether they want to be involved.
Like them to maintain it going forward, is what you're saying?
I'm saying the homeowner, I mean, it's their call, right? So I think it's more dictate to us what you're interested in doing.
What kind of restrictions they'd like to see
On the outlaw.
Some guidance, more so guidance than anything.
so, but again, they were taking, I think they were taking January off, because it's all volunteer groups, so. We haven't heard back from them, but we've been working with them. We submitted to the State Historical Society, we expect, they should have got back to us by now, we don't see any issue with them. So like I said, it's all coming together, and we don't see a significant change. If we did, we would change it. We're asking for a recommendation from the plan commission for approval of the final plan, subject to the conditions.
So when you mention the grading and you have a second version of the grading and the town engineer has seen it, I think all he's seen is the roadway and itself, right? The right of way, and so there's no grading of the lots along XX Oakdale?
No, we originally had that, because we thought we were gonna put some drains in the back of those lots, and we eliminated it. Just eliminate, first of all, you gotta spend money to move that dirt.
Right.
Mine doesn't wanna spend it. Secondly, we get a bigger area. we can put
Okay,
some-
and so that was our original concern, because there was some weird stuff going on those lots originally, and,
Yeah, and again, we wanna do some landscaping in the back, and so, they're locating some of those fields, they're gonna pre-design some fields for all those lots, as many as we can, especially on the north side, so we show them on the final plat, and when we do the construction, we'll fence those off, so that there's no heavy equipment on those lots, so. And then again, we wanna get some different ground elevations on those lots, down there, so we can establish ground elevations for not only basements, but the pond, we have some pay line, and we did get an exemption for the wet pond from the county that got approved by the county on the preliminary plan, so, trying to get Ben out there to look at that south side for that trees, because Ron thinks he should harvest those trees, there's old pines that we planted already 40 years ago. We've got to build a log cabin somewhere. But, well, we'll do something there to make that, so there's some landscaping from the neighbors.
right, right, so you,
There are some minor issues that we think with the staff and the town engineer, we met with, and the road supervisor. We're just
okay.
not done.
So even if the plat's approved, you're coming back for landscape, open space plan,
Deed restrictions.
deed restrictions, all those things are coming back.
And we haven't submitted to the county yet.
Right, and so even if the town approves the plat tonight, the county may make changes to the plat as well, and so those changes are gonna be added on.
So we think before you sign it, you'll get another.
Right.
And then we're ex-territorial with that. Determined there was
It must have changed, because it was originally
Well,
Waukesha.
calculation, you have to do that, because Waukesha, yeah, actually Renee Powers, Renee, you make that call, she says, I think it's a big bang, so, plat review, Department of Administration thought they were the closest one, but, city, just so you know, the city of Waukesha had annexed an isolated piece where I think they were gonna put those wells out in Vernon Marsh, so they're a lot closer to Vernon than anybody thought, so. But so, ex-territorial, you gotta choose the closest one, and it was, and then their dimensions, distance from Waukesha is different than Big Bend, so.
Yeah.
There's quite a calculation there that I've never done before, and I never want to do again. So, those are some issues, but again, I think Sean covered them pretty well, and we were pretty comfortable with those conditions. So we're asking for recommendation from the planning commission.
And Sean, on the time limit, I think we're up against a February 7th
is-
time limit. I
That's
think.
right. That's the 60-day deadline from the application submittal, so it sounds like the board is gonna meet before then. If the board chooses not to approve, they'd either have to deny it, or they have to ask for a extension. Yeah.
The county's here, Ben, anything to add to the? Yeah.
The preliminary, you guys are
Okay.
pretty thorough on the preliminary.
This is actually Ben's project too, so he's
there we go.
That's quite good.
he's looked at the preliminary.
But we, again, I always like to get the local, the townships, because you guys live here, and even though Ben does a nice job, I think you guys have a better feel. So if there's something that jumps up at anybody, we'd like to get it at the town level before we send it over to Ben. Or the county.
Plan Commission? Comments, questions? We're always concerned about coming back and approving something and then reapproving it, and
I understand. So that's why we ask you with those conditions, I think those conditions are pretty thorough. I think there's some work to be done before Sean's gonna recommend we
Right.
sign the class. So I don't think we'll sign it before Sean says it's okay.
In reviewing this submittal, I see the same number of conditions that we reviewed in the preliminary plat. Maybe more. I'm
Well,
not sure why we're here. And
Well, the final plat has different technical conditions versus the preliminary plat. So our surveyor's comments are more extensive because there's different things that are on the final plat versus the preliminary. There's
You
some,
mean like
there's some,
violations of the state statutes that
Well,
haven't
some-
been met?
And again, I'm a surveyor, some of those comments are up, surveying is more of an art than engineering is a science, like, the way I look at it. I'm both, I'm an engineer and surveyor. Some of his comments were preferential things too, so, which is fine.
Preferential?
Well, like where you put a label for a lot line, you want them on the inside, you don't have. there's no-
These are the requirements for a final plat.
There's no requirement that says the dimension on the lot's gotta be on the inside of the lot, that's something he would prefer. That was one of the comments, and I don't mind doing that, but it's not a state requirement.
How about monuments?
Monuments, we're gonna have to set monuments, yeah.
They're not on here.
Well, some of them are just things we just technically miss.
It's engineering comments, it's surveying comments, it's Town of Vernon Code of Ordinances that haven't been met. I don't see any benefit in approving this.
Well, the
I
only
think
thing I'd say-
all our conditions that we stated when we went through the preliminary plat have been ignored here.
there have been a bunch that have slipped through the cracks. I mean, the engineer has mentioned, hey, that I had the same comments for the preliminary plat and it hasn't been updated in the final plat. So there are loose ends here that haven't been tied up. Most of them are technical, and not substantive to the layout of the plat, but there are things that haven't been addressed that we pointed out for the final plat. Some are new for the final plat requirements, but the commissioner's right. I mean, there's some loose ends that just haven't been tied up.
We asked for a landscaping plan along XX there. It sounds like they're eliminating any grading along there.
No, those are good lot grading, there's still gonna be trees on there along XX, so.
I'd like to see some berms out there with some plantings on it. That affects the grading.
Well, if you saw the property, you've gotta realize that property line along XX is probably 10 to 20 feet on average below XX.
For half of it. Maybe not even half.
I bet you most of it.
No.
But where the homes are gonna be, most of it.
Yeah, as you get farther south, it gets a little closer, but it's, I was out there, we went along that property line, so, you'd have to build a 40-foot berm, and by the time you do side slopes, you got.
I haven't seen a grading plan yet. I can't determine
Okay.
that. I
Well,
have been out in the
reason we didn't do
field.
the grading
but-
plan, because we felt like we needed to get the town's input on what we're gonna do with that cul-de-sac, which we connected.
Yeah, that's my input. I
But-
think it should be denied.
But we did give you input on the cul-de-sac. Didn't we give you a waiver and?
No, yeah, but there was the grading associated with the
We're
cul-de-sac
connected
and
into
the,
an existing road that has a temporary cul-de-sac.
what happens with the pieces that have to be restored and so
And at
on.
some point, some townships.
Yeah, you're done,
cities prefer
unless you want to listen.
That you leave that cul-de-sac there, because it's there, even though it's on their property, are we gonna leave that pavement there, or do you wanna remove that and straighten out that road and the ditch and things like that? So we didn't get their comments from the town engineer until a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I was going to ask, to follow up Commissioner Nowak's point, on the preliminary, we approved the preliminary plat without a bunch of conditions, thinking that a lot of those conditions would be satisfied before the final came back, and now, I'm not sure that we made, the point I think Commissioner Nowak is making is we didn't make substantial headway in clearing points off the preliminary plat. I'm just wondering why that is so. Now, you mentioned one thing, the town engineer was perhaps getting, you just received something 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. And again, so on those technical comments, I said, well, let's make all those changes, even though I could argue with them about some of them realistically. Somewhat does meet the state statute, so there's some typos in there, which, okay, that was corrected, so I'll get those corrected. If you prefer to table it and come back next month, I guess we'd give you the extension from the standpoint, but again, from the standpoint of the planning commission, are you gonna see something different next month than you're seeing there today on the plan?
But next month, will you
Where
be
we-
able to have the grading plan, so, and the landscape plan, and will we know where the drainage easements on Lot 1 are gonna be, and,
Yes, because we're digging out, so, we're
Right.
worried about the frost, but we're still digging out there, so it's still weather permitting. I think the weather's okay, so yeah.
so that would tie it all together for some of us in terms of, hey, we're convinced it all works, hey, maybe we wanna see a berm or not, here or there, and so, I think that's the point that's being made, is that we've been moving along, and there's been important detail that
Yeah,
just,
it'll be a lot of paperwork, so if you wanna look at it, I have no problem providing that. You know, normally the staff looks at that, but if the planning commission feels that's appropriate, then they wanna review that stuff. That's why we're here tonight, just to make sure.
well, I mean, regardless if it's a lot of paperwork or it's with the final plat,
I don't have a problem with it.
but the conditions that are here, town board upon receipt of recommendation of approval of the plan commission, construction, civil, master grading, landscape, signage, covenants, land stewardship plan, all that's gonna come to the plan commission and board, and then the board gets the developer's agreement and letter of credit.
I don't have to know, it's probably another, so we could provide all that information, so.
We asked for something on signage, it's not even on on the final plat.
Right.
They were shown on the preliminary, now they're gone.
Oh, it's still a condition, so we'll get the signing plan.
On page 2, on lot 29, there's a natural area environmental corridor. Is that just for lot 29?
Which page are you looking at?
Page 2.
That is, since Ben is here, he can address it. They wanted an outline, and I talked to Ben, and there's some old growth pine trees there.
Right.
That, me and Ron think they should be harvested, but Ben's based on photography and some aerial photos, and he was concerned with that. So we had an easement there that, there's a landscape easement that if we had to take any of those trees out, we'd show what we were gonna replace it with.
It's not clear to me as to where that easement is.
Well, it's 20 feet off the property
On lot 29,
line.
And 30, yeah.
it doesn't indicate that on the final plat.
Yes, it does, I'm looking at it.
Well, how about lot 28, does it extend down to
It
that?
doesn't go.
Doesn't go there.
Well, it's not clear to me as to where that easement is. It's 20 feet wide, but
And it shows, I don't know, what would make it clearer for you?
well, if you showed it on lot 30,
It is. Well, we label it on 29, but the dashed line goes all the way through 30, it's at the building setback line. So there's two lines over the top of each other.
it looks like it's just on lot 29. There's a statement on the,
I could headset if that would be clearer for you.
well, it would
That
be
might
better.
help, that might help to hatch the whole
I
thing,
can hatch.
just like the landscape easement on XX.
Off the corner of lot 28, there's a comment there, building setback and landscape easement. Where's the easement?
So, well, yeah, that's along the back lots there, so I'll hatch that easements if that would make it clearer. Because I don't want to label every lot with those easements because it gets pretty cumbersome.
The hash part here, that's for prohibiting access to XX.
Right.
So where's the easement? Is that
That's the same thing.
20 feet wide?
No,
For
it's not,
landscape?
it's the whole 50 feet offset, basically.
Yeah, so
It's not clear on that page, no. If you look at the other page,
Yeah.
page 1, it's clear, but,
There's a lot of things that aren't clear to me.
right, the 50 feet is noted on the first page, but it's not labeled very clearly.
so technically, when you do a plat and it's several pages, you're supposed to cut them and pretend like it's all the same. If hatching those easements would make it better, we'll certainly do that. I don't have that.
It's a requirement.
It's not a requirement.
It's gotta be clear, right? It's gotta be clear.
I don't want to argue, because we would certainly, as Ron would tell you, and Nick, who went home sick, but, we're not one, if it takes another month to get it clear for you guys, that's fine, as long as we know what you're looking for. That's why we came here, and, that's why we're still
With
here.
the timetable, Sean, can we table this?
We can table it, we're gonna need a letter of extension prior to the next meeting.
We'll just make it to March 1st.
I will make that motion that we table it.
Okay, hang on just a second. About March 1st, as long as we're talking about extensions, can we?
Want to make it March?
Yeah, I was just gonna look at our calendar here. We do have a meeting a town board meeting, March 5th.
When's your plan commission?
Our plan commission meeting in March is March 11th.
Okay, we'll make it March 12th.
But we're hoping to resolve it in February if possible.
Well, we can do it in February then, but the extension, if we're gonna do an extension, right?
Yeah, but then we'd have to do
What?
another extension, so why don't we just make it March 11th and we'll try and get it done in February.
Does the town board need to act on it by the end of this extension? I think they do, don't they? John?
Yes, the town, everybody is.
So could we make that through March? We have our regular town board meetings are first and third Thursdays. And our regular plan commission is second Wednesday. So if we make it through March 20, that'll take us through our March board meeting. If we can get it done in February, we'll get it done in February. We're, like I've said earlier, at least I am sensitive to timing of developers and keeping things going. I don't view the function of government as to slow a private developer down.
Since it's
I mean,
late and there's no reports or anything, usually time is always of the essence, except when January, February, and the first part of March, it's like, there's not much you can do. We're so surprised we're digging out there now, so. and the frost is bad, so. But-
let's get it done then, so we
Well,
don't.
that's what I said. But from the standard of the approval of the plans, so.
And we want to do it right, so, I mean, I think.
Well, I would expect by the next meeting, we wouldn't have any conditions on these sheets here.
Well, then
Those are valid
Then
comments.
Sean doesn't feel like he's doing his job.
Yeah,
Okay with that, so.
but the point is good. If we can address as many or all of these conditions by next meeting, that would be very helpful. If there are certain things with the surveyor's comments that you actually have a contention with that you think is not a good idea, let me know ahead of time. We'll talk to our surveyor and see if we can work that out.
Well, and from my standpoint, I've been doing this for I've probably done most of the plans in this area for the last 20 or 30 years. And sometimes it's easier, especially when Ron's paying the bill for the surveyor to review it, sometimes we just make the changes. Because it's easier to change where we're located.
That's great, but if you think our surveyor's wrong about something, tell us and we'll figure it out.
Okay, I'll let you. He's not right, if that's how his preference is going.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert on those details, so I don't know.
So, okay. But is there anything else, everybody comfortable with, we haven't changed, everybody's comfortable with the concept, we didn't. I know you feel like there's some things missing, but is there anything else you're concerned with? I'll try and address those easements so it's a little clearer.
Well, I don't think anything's changed. I'll look at the plan commission, but I don't think anything's changed from the preliminary.
No, the general layout and the preliminary plat all makes sense and everyone's on
It's not
board.
supposed to change.
Right.
Right,
It's supposed to
it's-
look pretty close to it.
Right.
Right, so,
These are all technical issues, but, so, and I understand what you want to see, and that's fine.
well, yeah, we would like to see as few of conditions as possible. That just pushes the problem. And we'd like to, the plan commission recommendation to the board, the plan commission is supposed to be, our governmental approval of planning
Do
matters.
the best
and-
we can to put a bow on it.
Yeah, and the town board is looking to the plan commission, so, Commissioner Nowak, your motion is, excuse me, your motion is to table, and we talked about, an extension by the developer, and we talked about through March 20th, so would the motion be to table, provided the developer extends, to March 20? Written extension of the time to act to March 20th? Is that,
It's fine with me.
I'll second that.
And the only thing, before you vote, is we'll probably submit to the county and then plan after we make these changes to get the time schedule on them and to the village of Big Sam, so you know.
yeah, you can run parallel tracks.
That's exactly what we're trying to do.
Right. I would think so, that makes some sense. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion from the Plan Commission. Board's not here. Well, one member is still. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you,
All right, thanks.
gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
You'll work with Karen and get your written extension in?
I'll get emails.
Thanks, have a good night.
If you could do that before, get that extension in before our January 23rd, yeah. because otherwise we'll have to take some action on January 23rd. We don't want to do that.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, Ben, thanks for coming. Thanks, guys. Plan Commission, review and approval of the December 19th TIF public hearing minutes. I did look at those. I think we're all set. I'm all set on it anyway, so I'll make a motion to approve those minutes. I don't know if anybody has any
I'll
comments.
second, no.
We got a second. Any comments on the TIF public hearing? The only thing is the start time. I noticed I was guessing when I put in 10:40 or whatever it was. What was it?
I think it was 42.
Yeah, I actually put the start, with the motion being to correct the start time in the event. Yeah, verify and correct the start time as necessary. Friendly second, I'm assuming.
If friendly amendment, I'll agree, concur.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Plan Commission adjourned. No. I asked for opposition.